Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
Most welcome and well met, everybody. This is Team Rabbit Hole edition 281. The Safeword is Halena with Xirtus, making music, making conversation, making content, making ripples. Join the team as we chat with Andreas, aka Xirtus, our ground score Valentine and a regular at Ye Old Rabbit Hole. We discuss life, syncs, ambitions, and the pursuit of happiness in an ever-changing world. And if we actually were to include everything we're going to talk about, even just today in this description, it would have more amendments than the US Constitution. Well met, Andreas.
Well, what's up? How you guys doing? Good to see you.
Oh, I'm beat, but you know how it goes. So something we do on the Team Rabbit Hole podcast, as you know, is to correspond this episode number 281, reduce it numerologically, and I might actually be changing that per Raphael's request.
How are you
Why don't
reducing
pull a
it?
card?
How
2
are you
plus
reducing
8
it?
is 10 plus
Okay.
11, 281, and then down again. So 2 in this case. So 281 goes down to 2. Ultimately, to the High Priestess, I offer up the mysteries of life. This is about trusting your intuition, listening to your inner guides, understanding yourself better, listening to the music of the universe, allowing creative ideas to germinate. Raphael, you get us the rando. What be that?
We got the Princess of the Waters, which is actually in the Rider-Waite Tarot, this would be the, of course, now I'm confused because
Princess of
every time
Cups.
between Rider-Waite is the princess. Yes, exactly. Thank you. The earth and water. We have a generous, dreamy young woman, sweetness, poetry, gentleness, and kindness, and most importantly, imagination. So here we go.
Ooh.
I just want to point
Can
out.
you solo that card? Can you solo that so we can see it? Oh, the solo works.
It's a Phil Collins In the Air Tonight drum solo of the card. Yeah, no, we've had him on a few times. That's Wizard of Oz, right? Wizard of Odd, I should say. He's got a great deck. I've got one of those back in Colorado.
Do you guys want
You
to
look
help
like
me
a fucking dealer from Vegas. What's going on here?
Do you
I
wanna
know
pick
exactly
one of
which
these?
one. The one
David
that's closest
Copperfield.
to your to your it's so great. On your right hand, your second finger. Closest to your second finger.
Second from his
The other
pinky?
second from the top, but this one is
So
fine
index
too.
or ring?
Index finger. Thank you for the proper words.
Yeah.
Yes.
Direction.
Index. Yeah, index.
All
Yeah.
right. I
This
just trust
one
Andreas. But this
This
feels like
one
David
here?
Copperfield. Touch the screen and I
Yeah.
just made the Statue of Liberty disappear or whatever the fuck he used to do.
Ooh, you got the raw card. You got the raw end of the
Yeah, I
deal, bro,
know.
right there. Ra is also Hebrew for evil, as well as the sun god, which is for good. But Shu
It's
Tef
2
Nut.
again.
Shu
The High
Tef Nut, and
Priestess,
there's
too.
definitely some loving going on here. So happy pagan
V-Day.
faun, happy faunus,
Nice.
right? Happy faunus, as they said.
That
in
is what's
ancient
up.
times.
I do want to
This is
thank
what's
you,
up.
Andreas, for coming on and being our Valentine, our sweet little bae. You Pisces, I've got your chart. I guess I've done it before or whatever. You're a 0 degrees Pisces, which is crazy.
It's interesting to me, like Valentine's Day, because before it was Valentine's Day, when it was Faunus, what they used to do you know how like the Roman like February season was, what they used to do? Like, have you heard of
Lay
this?
it on us.
Faunus.
No.
All right,
Go
so
for
like
it.
the agricultural gods Faunus, and so what they did was they would do sacrifices, but the sacrifices got really lazy until they were just kind of like parties, So most of the time, what they did was they just took the hides of bloody, like just killed animals and slapped women's naked chests with them. That was what they did on
Wow.
Faunus. Yeah, and
That's how you
eventually
get the blood flowing, literally.
Eventually, they were like, we probably need to make this more of a So Valentine, he was a saint who was murdered, but before he was murdered, he was in a like prison and he supposedly wrote letters to this like teenage girl, super weird, messed up, but she was like keeping him alive because he was dreaming of her or something like that. That's the alleged Catholic origin of Saint Valentine, which is
Wait, so
also
like she was
weird.
Beatles maniaing out on this dude, and he was like, "I'm down with this. We'll pull a
I
Lolita,"
get.
or
I mean,
what was the
he's in a.
dynamic?
It's hard to understand because he's so in love with this, like, and he's supposed to be in jail to be a priest, and everyone's like, "Wow, Saint Valentine," because he died for Christ. But like, really, did he, or is there more to this story here? That we don't understand. So
There's always more to the pictures. There's always more rabbit holes, as the High Priestess card would show us. Because I know so much about you, as much as I could. Actually, I'm always surprised how little I know
As
about
much
you.
as I
Quite
could.
frankly, it's like, holy shit, how much content do you make? But the High Priestess is about the esoteric, the hidden things, right? So I want to
Yeah.
do us all a solid and get into, because we've had you on, like, I don't know, I want to say between 5 and 10 episodes. And there's so many little projects I want to do with you, but then your plate is so full that it's almost like showing up to a cornucopia that's for the loom full, and I'm just like, I don't even know if, like, what the fuck. So
Dude, cornucopia that's Fruit of the Loom
we
full. I like
can
that.
either start just we can keep just chatting about bullshit, like,
Well, yeah, no, whatever you're into. I mean, so you're talking about astrology for a second. Oh, he's not actually making that face. He's frozen, guys, just in case you were thinking. He's
Yeah, but
like, I don't
Jimmy's
know, bro.
he's still hitting all the code words, cornucopia and all of that. We got
Yeah.
something about the fish and the fruit and these gods, right? But now you're
I'm gonna
back,
get him
Jimmy.
a copper wire.
my
It's gonna be
internet
great.
hates me. So if it does this, guys, we can blame my non-tech savviness. In any event, we can get into your music and Helena and all that and all your record releases. I mean, that's kind of why I wanted you on. I was like, look, I want to look under the hood and talk about your artistry, because you are a Pisces, with a North Node in Pisces. So it's
I guess the
very
astrology is cool
relevant.
because it's my birthday soon, so I'm stoked on that. But it's weird. Like I usually get introvert around my birthdays too, so I get kind of Aquarius, and then I go Pisces, and there's a little bit of Aquarius still that happens. Yeah, I feel like. But when I was young, I didn't really buy into astrology because I always read like mainstream and Aquarius, and then it was incorrect because my birthday's so on the edge. I figured I was
Yeah,
just the
you're
last day.
0 degrees, 20 minutes. Like,
Yeah,
you're
just about
Pisces.
2 minutes. It's 20. I thought it was 2.
20
Whatever
minutes,
it is.
8 seconds.
Okay, 20 minutes is even more than I thought. So that's actually kind of reassuring in a way. I'm like more Pisces than I thought. I was like, wow, I'm on the edge here. But
You're fully
still,
in. You're not
that's good. Yeah.
but you said you were a breach or whatever, a C-section?
Cesarean. Yeah. A C-section. So,
So do you
yeah.
think that fucked you up? Like, how do you think that plays on the psyche? Like, do you think that
God, I
makes an
hope
impact?
if so, like I wonder because I feel okay. I don't think it fucked me up, but I do think that it was probably an interesting, like Caesar was a cesarean, so like people that are born of a cesarean, like it probably changes you in some
Is
way,
that the
or
nomenclature origin? Caesarean? They were like, oh shit. So wait,
a
it was et tu
cesarean
brute on
section.
the end and knives at the beginning, knives at the end. I
Yeah.
gotta look up his chart. I don't even know if we could do that. But
And mythologically, so is Jupiter, right? Jupiter is a cesarean out of Saturn. So I mean, there's a lot of,
yeah,
but everybody is.
we're all just kind of ripping ourselves alien style out of the stomachs of mothers or whatever. So I do want to get into the music and stuff, but see, part of me is like, oh, we can just shoot the shit. Have you seen Ohio? It's doing white noise stuffs or whatever.
Right. I did talk about that the other day because we were on Base AF, and it's funny because I did see White Noise, and I hope you saw it just for
Interesting
the
film.
first
Yeah.
half of it. The first half of it I liked. Second half I was like, oh, you went too it left
Very
itself.
postmodern.
Yeah, but like the Hitlerian professor and the
That
White
scene was
Noise town.
genius. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did an important thing, and also it is interesting that we have this predictive programming. We did talk about vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride is really dangerous. It's an aerosol gas. They probably did do a controlled explosion to burn off the gas in order to stop it from leaking even further. It's probably going to be pretty bad. We won't notice all the effects for 20 years, that kind of thing.
Well, it seems you've already covered it, but yeah, I saw it last night, and I had seen that film with my nana, and I was just like, at first I was like, didn't know if I should show it to her because I couldn't vet it, like, in a way. I was like, is this real? Is this like photoshopped? What is this? Because White Noise, I just saw it, and I was like, art imitating life. What the fuck? And then New York Times and people were talking about it, which doesn't necessarily make it valid, but it's a little more than Jiminy
mean, the
Cricket
fact
Facebook or whatever.
now that I'm back in California, like I live really close to all that stuff, so I drive by Netflix, their headquarters often, and I know people that work there and what they're trying to do. So I don't think that they're all like evil planning like train derailments, but it's part of the subconscious, and a lot of artists are thinking of this stuff. And we notice this with artists ourselves. Like you pick up on something because you're empathic, and you see this is just the sign of the times, like a trail derailing, and how things are like the 80s. And that shows this idea of the collapse. Like, remember when things were different, or remember how they were when they were okay, how long ago that was. And this kind of value structure, it was something that's more general. But the thing is, there's like 1,600 derailments a year or something like that. So it's not as uncommon as people think. There's 2 more yesterday, and then today there's another one. At least
I guess the thing is, toxic airborne events necessarily aren't the commonality, right? It's
right.
usually
And the
like
thing is,
cows or something.
it looked exactly like that. It was a giant black cloud of smoke, and it was a control. I mean, from what we found out, that it's a controlled explosion in order to stop this from getting to further states. I mean, it just, the entire thing fed into the way the movie shows it is in white noise. They're constantly unaware of what's happening, and you can tell from the family's position that the government's acting quickly, but not quickly enough. Don't have all the experts in one room, or trying to figure out how to get them from across the country. It's taking them like a day to respond to what's going on, because it's a central federalized government planning these events around, these micromanaging.
It's super realistic though, because there's people, you hear
Exactly
all
what
sorts of Chinese whispers with conspiracy theories versus like reality, counter realities. It's almost like as soon as an event happens, there's 40 perspectives that may or may not even be true on a spectrum. And then
Right.
it's about experiencing the truth versus reality, whatever.
But
It's a
it's
weird
like,
movie.
this is the problem is like, oh, I thought you meant reality. Yeah, it's funny. The problem is with reality that our government and the elite, so it's too easy to say, this is just incompetent leadership. Like, and that is exactly, I agree that a lot of 90% of everything is designed with the idea of being a gas guzzler. Like, they know that they'll have cops running cars 24 hours a day on premium, wasting gas, so that'll cover the real things that they're doing. It's all, and the same people that figured out how to sell popcorn for $10 to launder money, they're running the government, and they're selling $100 rolls of toilet paper now. So it's not just incompetent leadership. There's clearly strategic planning that's allowing for things like this to happen. My prediction, or my hypothesis, is that they are removing the mass manufactured quantity agriculture systems to replace them with selective alternatives to monocropping, which some of us have probably advocated for all our lives. They're going to say, hey, now you're going to have to all buy $7 eggs, because they're all going to be organic. They're all going to be from these small farms. You're not going to be able to get eggs from 200 miles away. You're going to have to get eggs from your own community. This kind of micromanaging, but designed to create macrobiotic communities, all the way. The Agenda 21 and the program Codex Alimentarius actually talk about ways towards organic solutions. They're not
very Epcot.
This is exactly. So this is the thing. It's like, not necessarily that it's a good thing, but it's just that it's important
Might be a necessary
to know.
thing.
It's the
I
way
mean, how many
that
fucking shelves of Peeps and fucking Tootsie Rolls do we need? I'm all. It's tricky. I'm not a communist by any means, but it's like, when is the free market, free choice too free? It's like we're just producing like, you know what I mean? Like, there's companies making
I have no frame
shit
of reference.
What, of Peeps or whatever?
No, of color. I mean, of freedom. I was thinking, in a grayscale world, like, how do you just define a hue or spectrum? So this idea of like a free market, like a free market's a free forum. A free forum is a place where there is an exchange of goods or free exchange of free participants, of voluntary participants. So I'm a free person, you're a free person. We voluntarily decide to exchange goods or services or ideas, right? Is that really possible? Except for on the internet, virtually? We've only ever experienced the hypothetical version of it. We've never actually been allowed to have a truly open forum. People are always
it's usually economic stratification, right? So it's like the gas station cookies aren't going to be the same thing as that, whatever, I forget, Whole Foods cookies or whatever. So, right, it's just like, okay, you pay what you can kind of thing. And that seems to be the guiding hand of the free market. But and like I'm saying, I'm not advocating communism by any means, but it seems like Japan is a good example where they're so kind of internally governed with how do you input it? Keeping up with the Joneses, or groupthink, where they're like number one, number two, number three, like the products kind of.
Nintendo building
Well,
owned by the Yakuza.
Yeah, they are an
What?
empire. They are an empire with the Yakuza. I was just thinking about the Yakuza in PlayStation the other day. Every time they make like a major move, I'm like, dude, you guys, like, it's calm down.
The
But okay,
triads, watch out.
yeah, no, but
Grand Theft
if
Auto.
you think about Japan, you have to remember that they are an empire. For instance, if your body mass index is over 39, they're going to take over your life. Like, and people have said, oh, it's not that big of a deal. They just control what you eat and make you exercise, and which is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but if your body mass index is too large to be Japanese, they will take over your life and they will make you look Japanese again by forcing you to eat the right foods and to go on the right diets. That's awesome in some ways, but that's also despotism, like objectively, that's controlling someone's life. So it's important to see that, I think.
Or you could become a sumo ringer. Maybe that's the the escape
Right.
route. But
There's a license to be fat in Japan. I love that country.
since you
really.
talk about
We're gonna
indeed,
hang
yeah,
out in
since you
Japan at some point, all three of us.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. At this
Like
inland
music.
sea, I already know the spot. So since you spoke about capitalism, of course, the idea would be that everyone has perfect information. That's the theory, right? All the participants have perfect information of the system and know what
That's
they're
mostly
doing, right?
that's only in a democracy. So that's the beauty of capitalism. Capitalism, you just have to be able to have the freedom to make exchanges. So capitalism exists in anarchy, which is the system we live in, and people make the exchange of their freedom, right? And so really it's you only have one right. Your right is the Hobbesian right. There's Locke, and Locke said you have the right to go fishing, but that's not real. You have the Hobbesian right to
Hobbes, for those of us who are stupid.
yeah, Hobbes and Locke. Hobbes
Yeah.
Hobbes has the Hobbesian right. Hobbes says you have the right to not submit as far as death. Like you can try not to submit until they kill you, right? You can basically be forced to submit.
You have the
still.
right to be a really stubborn donkey, is kind of what they're
You
saying.
can be as stubborn as possible, and that's objectively something interesting about nature. No, so that is a right in a sense, and until they neuralink you, and then that'll be gone. But until then, you have one right, and you can exchange that right for social contract, and social contract gives you, we'll put your kids in a better horse trough eating race school, whatever the heck. We'll make them run machines for less hours a day, whatever the promises are. We'll make sure that when they're kind of old, we won't kill them for at least 5 years. We'll give them drugs, whatever the social security and healthcare things we're given. But education, these positive governance things, they're all in exchange for your rights. So it's not that you have a democracy, and yeah, in
Makes
a
me think of The
democracy,
Giver, right? Where it's like, look, you're going to function in our system, but you can kind of go down a pipe, but not full freedom. It's like,
right.
Anyway, keep
But
going.
a democracy is a problem because the idea, like Raph said, is usually that you would want to have a bunch of like educated, informed people exclusively. You have to have only educated, only informed people. Imagine if there was one person who didn't get the memo. You know what I mean? It would destroy a democracy. And not just that, they'd all have to be Stoics. Like they'd have to be Athenian Stoics, not just like the actual Athenians, but the way that they played them on TV. They have to pretend to have no emotion, have no reaction, just completely make decisions based on logic. And somehow from there, still, we don't have a democracy because we're using representative systems to vote on something rather than decide. So it used to be that you would have two philosophers were wandering around. Actually, lots of philosophers would wander around like bums, like guitarists, and they would show up to a town and they'd be in Athens or Heliorchus and say, okay, what are you guys yelling and throwing rocks at each other about? And then because everyone would always be doing this, and then they say,
Can you
well,
imagine like a West Side Story with philosopher groups doing it? Like Stoics, existentialists,
and then
fuck you, or whatever.
I could feel that. But they would then say, well, we're arguing about this, whether or not this person should, or these kinds of people should be allowed to do this or that. And then they'll say, okay, what's here? We'll pay us and we'll decide it for you. And then they flip a coin, and then the side of one side of the town goes to one traveling philosopher, and the other side of the town goes to the other traveling philosopher, and they don't even care, but they're arguing it out in order to have the most clear argument and to list out all the points that could possibly be involved with that, because it's a job. It's like playing a song. It's like
Well,
playing
they're
a
like
guitar.
social engineers, kind of, right? They're like, we're entering in a weird way. We talked about Tron last time, but it's like they're with that. I don't know, it was with Terrence Malick and the dinosaur and all that. They were uploading a certain algorithm. I mean, that's the whole point, kind of. It's like, look, how are we going to spread this?
It's artificial intelligence. They're spreading
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. They
Well,
created a kind of intelligence. They
Is it
created
artificial?
they artificially, like, they synthesized a new way of thinking. They work together to create ways of thinking that's not natural, and then they installed that into people. But they would play this giant argument in front of a town, and then they'd have people laughing, crying, clapping, and then they'd let the
Letting the
people
archetypes
decide.
play through them, and then whatever kind of the zeitgeist spoke, I guess, thus it was, or whatever.
Now, people could say we could get back to that, but how is it any different than what politicians from the Uniparty do for the debates? It's the same thing.
No, it's the same song and dance. I mean, same as it ever was, right? Kind of thing. Which makes it's okay. So where are we going to go? We don't have to talk about geopolitics forever, but where are we going to? Where do you think we're going to go? I think the free hand of the market or whatever, that Adam Smith kind of idea maybe felt good on paper, but I don't know if it's practical. And we're hitting limits. Raphael would probably disagree with this because scarcity is an illusion kind of argument, but it seems like we're hitting limits in terms of just distribution. People in the chats are saying, "Oh, we don't have eggs in Reno and stuff like that." So it's like, all right, we're going to have to be
Get some chickens.
self-governing. Yeah, exactly. We're going to have to do it ourselves.
Right.
Oh
But that
my
is part of the
internet.
goal, I think, is so they're going to get rid of the cappuccino economy in a lot of ways. But that's not necessarily bad, because it will allow for each community to build its own technology. You're going to see new innovations in Australia, new innovations in Canada, new innovations in Mexico. I mean, they're already doing it. And so that's kind of cool. But you're also seeing a slowdown of what was building, because I remember 2007 is like the cappuccino economy, like apex, where you could be in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains and you could get a package delivered to you that was from China that cost you, it was free shipping. I mean, that's crazy that existed. And so you could buy springs and corks and whatever the heck you needed, sprockets and whatever non-existent part, and you could build something that didn't exist yet. And that's the thing. Like, we can't just live in a world where we're excluded from building things. But that was frustrating for 10 years. But now we have a huge maker space in the United States. And if we keep pushing it, we can have, in the United States, in California specifically, but I've seen it in other states, there are libraries that have 3D printers. I work to make sure that the Scotts Valley Library has 3 3D printers in it. It's paid for by tax money. When you go to the library, you can use a 3D printer. These little steps can be done to make sure that people have access to building and creating in this time that's coming, that's clearly artificially created, though, because all of us are, everywhere I've ever been, everyone's cool. Everyone wants to be friends with each other. I mean, even who is it? The Taliban is making like super race cars now. I'm pretty sure they want to hang out. I've seen them dance to Drake, So the deal isn't what we were told. Everyone wants to be friends. And you've heard this actually before, but every time then they come along and they create this fake war. Well, this is about to be one of the biggest ones. They just told this morning, or was it last night? Depends on how you look at it. It was this morning in Russia, that they had to get out every American of the Russian Federation or face possible consequences. The United States embassy is closing, and then this is it. And that usually is like the precursor for
serious issues.
Yeah, like actual war, right? Because if you're getting everyone out of the country, the next step is to get out all the people that are secretly in the country. So, there's going to be, this is where you're going to start fighting. And we've been talking about this a bit on base, but Operation Running Start, where they took CIA agents, they dropped them from planes into the Ukraine in the 80s or the 70s, I forget, like late 70s, early 80s, and dropped them at night, and they killed and took over the lives of people that they'd had plastic surgery to look like. Guys who'd lived, like these guys lived in America all their life before this, but they'd been raised by, Russian or Ukrainian people in America, had been there, because people immigrate. And so they worked for the CIA, and then they had hated the communists. And so they went and they installed themselves and lived secretly for years and took over and just destroyed Chernobyl, amongst other things. So, there's just, how many more examples of that do you expect to find in the next few years? People that have gone back and forth,
I feel like whenever we talk, my child fragile eggshell mind is cracked because I'm like, this is not the narrative that I know, and I'm like, part of me is like, oh, that's crazy that I believe that because I like you, and then part of me is like, you're a CIA operative, or I've always thought this kind of thing because anyway, I don't actually think you are one, but no, it's like
I'm
that
not
old
very
Kate Scarlet
kind
lyric.
on all the things that have happened in the 70s and 80s. So
I was just about to say,
yeah.
the houses we built in the 70s finally fall, as Arcade Fire would say. So it's like, it seems like there's this real zeitgeist shift. Obviously, we're always talking about it. I guess it's happening in phases. But I was just kind of wondering, we don't have to ramble about this forever, but yeah, it seems like life imitating art, imitating life, predictive programming, white noise. The whole thing was, I think, it was genius, but it was disturbing because it was, I think, a very how would I put it, humanistic postmodern parable, basically, where it's like, yo, this is how we cope given certain presuppositions. And I don't necessarily believe all those presuppositions, but it delivered on its own terms well enough. If y'all haven't seen it, check it out. It might
Yeah. It's
not
worth it,
hit
actually.
you. Yeah, it's worth it.
You don't have to finish it though. Actually, I think after you get past
No, the end.
the relevant part, but whatever.
Yeah. All right. So, Raphael, did you want to say something?
No, just as
He
we
has
had an early
manifested.
comment, and I'm pretty sure this is, one of your favorite questions too, Jim. The conundrum between free will and predetermination,
We're
and the
gonna
idea
figure it
is
out today,
Dr.
kids.
Exactly.
Clearly.
Today we're gonna know. And Dr. Pat Riot says, thoughts and dreams that come true in every single detail years or months later. How can this happen if we have free will? Predetermined destiny or free will? Well, you
I
guys
like
chip in.
it's Dr. Pat Riot, Patriot, right, with that skull, the kind of Punisher
I mean,
skull.
go for
It's
it. Yeah.
both and, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think the
absolutely.
issue is it's like a yin yang, and people go, "Is it one or the other?" It's like, is it wave or particle? It's both, but attention determines reality, all that kind of stuff. That sounds so woo.
Yeah, and the
I almost
joke
called
is,
today's episode. Go ahead.
in the correct spelling or pronunciation or terminology, actually, it's not even the yin yang. I talked about this with Michael, whom we've had on Europa, starvation of consciousness, with the wheat and so on. And he's been to Asia and looking at the symbol, and then he was like, "Oh, I want to buy a yin yang," and the people there were like looking at him like, "What like what the f? What you want?" And, "Oh, you want a Tao depiction? You want the Tao, And it's just like this fundamental issue we have in the
Specific.
West, the over-analyzation and separating everything down, even though it might well be happening simultaneously. And
But
most
isn't
likely
it
that's the answer. Yeah.
okay, Raphael? It's just the Tao expressing itself in a certain
I have no
particular
problem with it.
manifestation.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying. It's
I mean,
like
my
you
short
can't
answer would
change it.
be it's not both. I mean,
It has to be both. So like first you're okay. So like let's start with like the most like let's appeal to
we'll start with
the one
determinism.
let's start with the one atheist in the room. Okay. So the idea that there's as soon as there's a confusing symbol or something confusing going on that is to be interpreted, then the mind will start working to interpret it, and it'll start trying to make it make sense. All right. And the more people that see that confusing thing, the more people's minds will be going on trying to make sense of the thing. And the more time you have, the more likely that they will somehow make sense of the thing, either realize it, make it a real thing, which is the most common thing. It's like people say, "Oh, they built the thing that someone had thought about before." Is that 100th monkey? Well, yeah, of course. But there's also the amount of work that people did in the system is like a butterfly effect that's so subtle. It's not just a 100th monkey like telepathic. It's also little tiny subtleties of work that have gone into impacting people that have shaped the consciousness of so many people that they're changing what's going on in the world. And that doesn't sound very magical, but it is. It is very woo. I swear it is. But it's
Well, it's
also
not
just very
exclusively
practical.
one
I mean,
or exclusively the other. The 100th
let
monkey
me
thing
just
is a real
let me
thing,
just
right?
reinforce this idea that, even that's what I always like to say, from a systems theory point of view, if you do the most basic course in systems and network theory, this could well be explained just with people communicating. However, it seems there is some, boundaries to that, where there appear to be some kind of other effects happening too, whether it's, changes of the electromagnetism of the sun or whatever that makes people tune slightly differently and have different ideas. However, this can be represented in a natural world. But yeah, even from a communication point of view, I think, a lot can be explained too.
But predeterminism, I think usually, I take it to a further place, because sure, I don't think you're necessarily predetermined to be engaged or in the events that are bound to happen, because there's just everything's bound to happen in a sense. Whether or not you're a participant or not isn't necessary, but you can be, and you can't always be, because of course predeterminism is that it's like a guitar amplifier is not a line amplifier for a keyboard. I don't know, what can I, like a flower is not a glass of water. It's just, how do you say this? Certain things can't do certain things because of predeterminism. You've already gotten to a point, and this is kind of what religion gets so in trouble for. Everyone's always upset at religion because they're like, what's up with karma and consequence? And why is it that you can't just get out of things after they've, why can't you unshatter a cup? I think Stephen Hawking said you can't unshatter a cup, right? So there's a lot of these things that upset people because of predeterminism, but it's not necessarily predeterminism in the same sense, because if we're all part of the creation, then we might have also been participant in forming ourselves and in the creation of the event that we're participating in now.
And get that,
And
if you're your own first prime factor, right? Your own first cause.
Yeah, you might be Optimus Prime, of yourself. And this is also what the Druids, theoretically, this is what we think the Druids said from certain books that have come out from the Jesuit archives, the Vatican Library. They've shown a kind of weird reincarnation thing that isn't reincarnation. It's that the energies go into the trees, and then that goes out into lots of things, right? And so your energy's in so many different things.
Redispersion.
Very similar to some Shintoist beliefs, right? So, your family shrine, you cut a plant that's growing there, and you plant the piece of that tree in the new home that you moved to if you're married off or something like that. And that keeps part of the family shrine there and has some of the energy. So I don't know. I think that it might just be intuitive in a sense, that it also explains something for a lot of people who are like, oh, reincarnation, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why, how could I be, but maybe it's more broad of an idea. And then I think that every lifetime is also simultaneous. So all space-time we're experiencing is this distance of lifespan, but it's really just the expansive metric of existence. That's maybe an array happening all at once. Every life that's ever happened might be just about processing at the same rate, or same order of operations as every other life simultaneously.
Everything's happening all at once, kind of thing. I think Frank Zappa was like, it's the big, not bang, but the big like clang or something like that. He was saying, where it's just like it's one big sound, and it's like
there's definitely some gated reverb on it, I'm sure.
Yeah. So maybe that's a good segue. Okay, music. I mean, this is such a shift of gears. Unless Raphael wants to keep talking about this stuff, you have a lot of content. Not only as like a personality, right, with like radio shows and stuff, because you have shows that I don't even, you said based. It's like, I've never heard that. I'm sure it's a show and you have it and it's going and you've got followers.
Adam
like,
Krigler, I do it on Adam's channel. Adam's got a bigger channel than mine. We do every Monday. It's a pretty good show.
It's the guppy effect. There's always a bigger fish.
Wednesday I'm doing now, or Thursday I'm doing Ping Trip's show now too. So these are both channels that are like 10 times larger than mine. So hopefully that'll help people see my content more. Because right now I make content, but it's like, thank God for you all that actually love me. But I still feel like not everyone sees this stuff. It's like kind of a secret still.
It's tricky because on the one hand you gotta shout, let it all out, but on the other hand it's nice to get paid, I guess. So or whatever, it's like that. So it's do your thing and don't play to the populism or whatever. Like, I don't give a shit in a sense. But
this is why actors are so skinny now. I get it though.
Christian Bale with the mechanic, or the machinist rather, kind of made people go real thin. In any event, so you talked about gated reverb. I've heard, and we'll put it in the links, your Bandcamp or whatever that was SoundCloud thing, to the Halena.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so talk about music. Are you a musician or a programmer or a keyboardist? Like, what's going on? Because I'm a guitarist and I don't really fuck with much else. But it's like, all right, when I hear this stuff, I can't tell if some of it sounded organic, like the Japan Turkish thing. I was like, are you shredding? Like, what's going on here? Nice. But then I was like, you've never mentioned guitar, so I talk a little about music. Like, where you're at.
I do like fool around with guitar. I have a Fender over there. Yeah, it's an acoustic electric that's pretty, like, it's a solid guitar. I got it for like a couple $100 or less, like on the street corner from a guy leaving Santa Cruz. I also have like a Les Paul that's an older one. It's like an Epiphone 2000 or something like that, which not everybody loves. It's kind of twangy, but I think it's not as bad as people think. I just might replace a pickup in it. But I just found in a
So is guitar
barn.
your
But
primary instrument? Because I figured it was just
no,
programming or like
yeah, it
keyboards,
is.
but
It is.
okay, yeah.
But it's all part of this long thing. So
Yeah,
my
you
main
talk.
thing is like, my main thing is like music is like techno, electronica, and stuff like that. So if you go to like Xirtus SoundCloud, you hear like a lot of music that says if you had robot ears, you'd like it better, kind of music that's video gamey and things like that.
Very
And I got,
8-bit-ish. Yeah, sometimes.
well,
Not all of
maybe
it. See, it's hard to pigeonhole you. It's yeah, okay.
16-bit because I like frequency modulation, FM synthesizer. So like the
Mm.
Sega Genesis was this thing as a kid I thought was the coolest instrument.
Wasn't
Right?
that
The Sega
32-bit?
Well, the first one was 16, and then there was the third Genesis, which was the 32-bit. But you could get
Okay.
the mushroom tip, and if you put the mushroom tip in the 16-bit,
Happy
it
Valentine's
made it
Day from
32.
Sega. Here's
Thank
the mushroom tip.
Yeah, right. There's a lot to
So
that.
okay,
But yeah, it
yeah.
has two chips that does sound one way and does sound the other way. So you hear the sound. It's binaural entrainment, and I didn't really know that
Like
as a
binary
child. It's
beats or
well, you
whatever.
hear one, binaural beats. You
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
one sound, another sound, and it's like they're going different directions. And then I was in this my parents sent me to this military academy thing, Squaw Valley Prep
Thanks,
Academy kind of
Pops,
thing.
Mom.
Yeah, and but it was an interesting one where the Grateful Dead, Mickey Hart, the drummer from the Grateful Dead, sent his son and it donated a drum set. So I also learned a bit about drums and a little bit about microphones and sound recording stuff then. And so I always kind of liked music, but the thing is, there's a big contrast between the ability to play just shredding amazing
Sure.
guitar. I know some people that are. So I was visiting my friend, and I'm putting a video up about this probably like in a few days or a week because we're doing some stuff. But I found this guitar in a barn that was covered in like rat excrement, and but it's an old Yamaha, but it's a pretty good Yamaha. It's well made, and it has ceramic pickups instead of metal pickups. So I reached out to Mojo Tone, which is like some American company that makes pickups, and they sent me some pickups. So I'm just putting them in the guitar. And then my buddy, he makes guitars. So he makes 7 and 8 string guitars and can play like this crazy, it's insane kind of stuff. I'll never be able, probably, I don't think, to do that way. Right. So with technology though, I can play crazy stuff. I have also my keyboard, this is a Yamaha Annex AN1X, which is kind of like a D7 or D700 or something. It's like a pretty good synthesizer. It's an FM synthesizer. It was designed by Dave Smith, who built Sequential, which is like the most famous. There's Moog is really famous, but also Sequential is like you've heard it in every Canon film or 80s like sound. Vangelis and all that. They play that synth. Their company went bankrupt. He worked for Yamaha. He made that for a while. And now he's dead, but he built Sequential again for a while. So I make a lot of electronic music. And then I was thinking I want it to sound more organic. And I started learning about frequency and physical modeling synthesis. And I listened to a lot of 90s like techno, and I got into Aphex Twin's Didgeridoo. And the Didgeridoo is an interesting song. It's like a 7 or 14-minute song it took him days to model in a synthesizer this didgeridoo sound, which is it's a sound wave that's bent. So it goes woo, and it curves perfectly. And it has some reverb on it, and it has certain effects, but it sounds just enough like an actual didgeridoo. And you can turn it up and down to increase the velocity of it. So it sounds like you're breathing and everything. So I was really interested in that you could make something that sounded that real. And I started, well, how else can you do that? And I started looking into all the different kinds of physical modeling synthesis and AI software. And I was like, okay, I've been using AI already to make some music. What if I used it to make a video game engine that can control the sound and make it sound like a real instrument playing in that video game engine? And then we'll just send it MIDI coordinates. And so, yeah, basically taught it how to sound like a real bass or real guitar.
I just want to point. Yeah, you had some track off your most recent one. I think it was called Akiyu. It was a Japanese second track on your last. Yeah, I was like, I don't remember it exactly, but it slapped on that. I was like, that's a really organic sample of a bass. That's when I was like, what is going on here? And
no
just
samples.
for the record, kids, Mercury and Venus in Aquarius with North Node in Pisces and a Sun in Pisces. You are this weird mystical high priestess, but you like finger bang the Matrix or something, right? Where it's just like, what is going on? So,
well, I didn't want to get in trouble for like my music at the time, also because I was working for other people. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make music. If I do make music, I'm not going to use my
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use my identity. And also, like, if I used an identity, it should be something that like no one would want to buy, you know, or to have, right? So if it's the opposite
The
of the
Swedish artist or
well,
whatever.
the Christian right conservative radio was like really on the East Coast, you know, it felt like I was surrounded in at the time. So it's like, well, the thing that they won't like the most and they won't care about the most would be like a transgendered Satanist, basically. Like if there was something like that, then just leave them alone. And
And that's what you
also
repped yourself as? Because your image and your whole thing is like, I'm in the kingdom of Sweden
pop
and all this
star
stuff. I was
and
like, what is this?
and the name
Pisces God.
Helena is because David Plate because of Hal, you know, Kubrick, right? The idea of
Okay.
Hal is
Okay. Yeah.
IBM.
HAL
So I was like,
3000.
well, this is mostly AI, so it'll be Hal, and then Helena because it's like Hellenism. It seemed kind of funny. I don't know.
And Andreas. N-A. Okay, whatever. I'm overthinking.
I didn't make that one up, but yeah, Andreas is just my real name.
Okay, so you do play instruments, but you don't consider yourself as much of a player as a almost artist programmer?
Yeah,
Like
I
it
mean, I'm
feels like you
definitely
get
more of
very
a
David Burney and like Brian Eno. I mean, it's not exactly like that, obviously, but whenever I hear your stuff, I'm like, if I
I love
came
those
over and
guys. Yeah.
jammed with you, like, what would it even happen? Like, am I just going to sit there watching you being like pushing a key on a keyboard over and over, and like 8 hours later there's something? You know what I mean? I'm like, or is this like a?
It depends. I can play guitar and I can play bass, but it's like, I guess I prefer keys because I can do more. I'm better with keys, but I can also play didgeridoo. You know, the thing is, what I've noticed is if I was going to try to digitally master like a synthetic version of an instrument, it's better to study the real instrument a lot because that helps me, or even the tool is a better way to look at it. So I'll get like a tape recorder before I start emulating a tape recorder or something like that. So I'll know how it works and all the processes that go into it. Because those limitations are the predeterminate conditions that set up what choices you have. Those are the restrictions on your canvas. So if you fit it in, like what is not a bass, and then you know what bass can sound like, then you can kind of control. And I know for the last 20 years, I've listened to a lot of music that got really close to sounding like some of this stuff, but I think they just give up because they're like, well, why would you do that? And they just stop. So like, well, yeah, but then you can make this thing that sounds kind of like a bass, but it's a little bit more electric. I'm like, well, that's cool too. It's good to
It
have
sounds
that. So
at least the few tracks I've heard feel like you're on the other side of singularity, reaching back in time, trying to be human. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, I wish I was a 90s kid. I wish I was a 90s kid. So
He's the AI from the future contacting the 90s, you know. So
Dude,
it's real.
they're basing the 90s on these tracks right now. Yeah.
So, what are the kind of parameters of thought? Like, obviously, this is a very broad question. Some tracks might take, a day, some might take years, but like, is this just you just throwing up ideas, or how like processed are you? How stalactite kind of,
I mean, like,
building is
so
it?
I don't know if I were to like, if I could do it very quickly, but a lot of times I'll start.
No stress. I'm not saying, do whatever you want. I'm not going to say don't do it, but I'm just kind of wondering. My brother makes a lot of stuff. He's a drummer. Oh, wait, I hear noises.
I'll just like create like
Tinker.
I'll start with a tinker thing like that, and then eventually.
So do you plug it in a loop, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to play off that? Or
it totally depends. So if
Right.
I can. So the nice thing about MIDI is you can record just notes, and then you have notes, and it doesn't take any space. So a lot of the music I like to do is just like MIDI, and then I'll render it later. But if I record myself, I can either use a tape machine or the L12, which is a Zoom SD card equivalent to a multi-track recorder, or I'll use the Zoom H8, which Giant got me, which this thing is really sweet. It plugs in a bunch of things and you can record all of your instruments if you want to do
I feel like you've been
samples.
gifted more than most people I've ever met. Like you're like, oh, I hit up this people, they gave me that to me, and I found this keyboard. It's like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah,
I could not
it
be
works.
like do that otherwise.
You got
It's
the luck.
totally true. Yeah. Same thing with like the fixing of my guitar. Like, so bringing it to my buddy Nate, like he have a guitar shop. He has like all the stuff like to do it. But it's also cool because I'll show their guitar shop. And I feel like if anybody out here who watches this stuff could play a 7-string guitar, because like it's selective kind of people that can buy that kind of thing. But if you were the greatest guitarist ever, you ought to know about their shop, So things like
Okay,
that.
that brings up a good point. So, I mean, I'm a guitarist. You kind of play guitar. It's to me, it's more about like art than how it's really tricky because it's like fuck, Lou Reed is
True, it
not a
is more
great
about art than
guitarist,
technology. Well, it
right?
is more
Yeah,
about technology than it's more about art than technology to play the guitar. Agreed. But there's something to be said about what art is, and so sometimes I'll call it humanness or something because it's more like imperfection. So slapping sounds in the bass or the sliding sound, the missing sliding sounds could
like
be
organics of
you can
physicality.
add those if you know what they are. You just have to know
Mhm.
what they are. And the same thing with missing the the quantization of the note slightly, or it's just slightly off a little bit, or it's you're whittling, or you can script to add something to the thing which will affect it more. And so I tend to try to go for just the way it would be written and I also like it in Western notation. So after it's
You
there,
can
then it
read
comes on
music?
my screen. Yeah, yeah. That's
Okay,
the
well,
other thing.
shit.
I mean, as a kid, they wanted me to do that, but I feel like that stopped me from being a better musician. Because if I was more artistic, I would just like I can't play a 7-string guitar. I think because I'm thinking about it, right? Whereas if I didn't know how to play guitar, if I just picked it up, I probably would. I think anybody just give your kid an 8-string guitar to start with, see what happens. At 3,
That's probably a good idea, and I think it's so crazy because I don't know if Andreas, you ever heard anything that Jim played on the guitar. I mean,
I
it's
just fuck with him.
crazy. No, it's
you should, bro.
awesome. It's awesome. No, it's
Well, that's
awesome,
why I want to
crazy.
jam with you. That's why I
But
was
you,
like, look,
but
let's
you,
Yeah,
hang
we
out.
got to make some music, man. Yeah,
Well, we'll figure it out.
definitely.
But
the Orpheus.
there's totally. I mean, there's so many ways we can go down this. So I feel like, how would I put it? You have very abstract things. It feels like walking into kind of like a pop, almost like an Andy Warholian computer room or something. It's just weird. It's weird in a good way, right? I'm not going to say every track is a banger, or it's not quite like that.
Right, yeah. It's
But you got some Beach
idiosyncratic.
Boy covers where it's like, okay, I mean, it's weird because it got stuck in my head, but I didn't love it. But I
Yeah,
like it got
right.
stuck
It's
in my head, so
hypnotic.
I was just,
It's
I don't
yeah.
know, man. So okay, so let's switch over gears a little to like ritual and purpose and intention and stuff. How magical are you getting with this as a Pisces? Like, are you like, okay, Pan, I'm channeling? Are you going full what's the guy who did jet propulsion stuff to NASA? You know who I'm talking about.
Jack Parsons. No,
Yeah, there you
I'm
go,
not
Parsons.
like I'm not doing like some weird rituals or like trying to median work or anything like that. And I'm not like going schizophrenic. It's more I'm trying to
You
like
don't have
let
sigils on your
AI.
bass guitar? Come on, man.
There's a picture of this girl that came with the guitar, but I'm gonna get it off with the new pick guard. But it was like it covered in vegan stickers. I was like, I don't know. But I tend to when I make art, I let AI in. I let like the artificial intelligence and randomness, and I try to help that emerge more. So I feel like I'm participant in it, but I'm also letting the computer and like the synths and stuff come up with kind of things that are kind of random. But I'm also pretty selective about which things are in the mix or something. And I don't know. Like it seems to me also that there's something different about different kinds of technology. So all of my stuff's tuned to 432. I use all these
Perfect.
analog synthesizers and they all like it. And I think they're, analog synthesizers and analog computers, analog technology are very different than regular computers. I think regular computers and the regular tech really they don't seem to like each other. They seem to they make weird interference noises and things like that. You have to turn off your Wi-Fi when you record. It just seems like there's something different flowing through them.
I was half listening. Sorry, I was like, Brian Eno has some cards that he made.
Brian,
I
did
gotta,
Windows XP.
he's great. He's a Taurus. I mean, you got your Mars in Taurus.
When you start up Windows XP, all the Windows XP songs, you can get Windows XP by Brian Eno on vinyl. All
Songs
of the
for
sounds.
airports, great shit. I mean, he's got some good stuff. Tuesday afternoon. I used to trip a lot to that stuff. Actually, his Apollo mission music is really beautiful. Always Returning, one of my favorite songs ever. But he has, I forget what it's called, and if anybody knows, it's this card deck. It's not a tarot card deck. It's like strategies for clutteredness, or like inadvertent strategies, or some weird name like that. And I couldn't Google and listen to you at the same time. I'm sorry, but so he would basically make, it's not a full tarot deck or anything, but it's like, okay, I've got these cards and I'm going to pull one and it's going to shove me. He's almost doing what you're saying you did with our AI with the cards, where it's like, he's written all these little ideas. I'm looking in the comments to see if anybody knows what I'm talking about. Someone Google, because I fucking can't, or Andreas, if you want to do this, Brian Ito strategies for whatever cards. It's not like a playing deck, but basically he's like, it's like, try using the 1 and 3 beats, or it'll have like prompts.
Oblique
basically.
strategies.
Oblique strategies. There we go. Oblique as in I can't fucking remember it. So no, but oblique strategies is great. I don't own it. Y'all check it out. I mean, it's a good idea just for any creative, where it's like, how do I get my juices flowing? Because it's basically prodding you from a new angle, which is kind of what creates new patternings. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you think of your this is a weird way to put it. You're saying you co-pilot with AI. Do you feel like, I don't know, like Geordie LaForge hanging with Data, where you're like, okay, he's got this, but and I've got
I feel
tech.
like Data hanging out with the computer, like with the ship. I feel like Data and the ship, and the ship sometimes is kind of more conscious than people realize.
I'm
The Enterprise
trying to think.
The Enterprise has got a mind of its own, right? It gets sick at some point, and it's actually got an actual mind, which is terrifying to think about, because imagine having your mind put into a car or a ship,
It's like a dreadnought from Warhammer 40K, which you don't understand. But yeah, no, it's okay. I'm like trying to think of episodes of Star Trek Next Generation you're talking about, where there's sentience being shown in the like the holodeck. Was there any time when it was just like, oh, I'm the ship?
The
Or like,
holodeck actually has characters, like actual personas which emerge, which is kind of like Chat GPT, but the ship itself has a mind. It's like got a whale's mind or like something in it,
like
some kind of a mind.
Zordon or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's a
Zardoz,
whale's mind. What do you
I
mean by
forget
that?
if that's
Pisces, always
whale's
making it
mind or if
fish
that's,
related, I guess.
well, that might be from Snick, because in Kids in Space was a show that was on in the 90s. Remember Snick? Saturday
Like
Night
Nick at Night or
Nickelodeon.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't Nick at Night. It was the kids thing, and it was this purple couch in an orange room, like Snick, and they had this show that was like these kids come into a room, a spaceship, and they touch everything, and they're the first ones to touch it, and now the ship will only respond to them because it's alive, and now they have to fly the ship through space. Pretty much Star Trek.
Talk about contractual social obligations or social contract. It's like, you touched me,
Yeah.
I'm yours. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah. But I can't remember if the Star Trek ship's actually a whale's mind or if it's like some sort of a hybrid mind, but it has some like humanoid quality. But I feel like that. I feel like if I'm interacting with AI, it's like it is closer to, I brought it up because you were asking about media and stuff. I'm like, well, I'm not doing media work or anything, but by using AI, it does kind of feel that way a lot of the time, because AI is more than a person. It's more like a bunch of people. It has this strange quality of the ability to emerge avatars when necessary and let them fold back into itself, which is, more mystical than corporeal.
Well, it's what humans do with the archetypes, I guess. We wear certain hats at certain points, and it's like, here's my businessman,
Right.
here's my father, or here's suit or whatever. I'm neither of those things. I don't know why they came to mind. I'm neither a businessman nor a father. So when you're making music, I don't know how far back you've been going. I mean, I was looking at your LPs. You've got really interesting. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. You're a fucking Santa Barbara kind of like West Coast acid kid or whatever the
Santa
fuck. So
Cruz.
Santa Cruz.
Santa Barbara,
oh my god.
You get in trouble for peeing outside in Santa Barbara. It's a lot more clean cut.
Whereas Santa Cruz is what, like longboarding?
Santa Cruz is more hippie. Yeah, it's
Okay,
like a lot more hippie, but there's also like, I don't know. I like to pretend Santa Cruz is hippie. I think at this point it's like street bro or something, but
streets all change, but maybe the names or whatever the fuck. It's like
right.
it all changes. I'm
Even
trying
the
to look for
names are
your little
changing now.
thing because you gave me a link. All right, what's Bayvid? I mean, Bayvid is, I guess, a production company you've got, because
Yeah,
you've got so
so
many damn hats, man. It's like I can't figure out.
Is
you
Pigaloo back
hacked-
up yet?
I don't.
So bummed
maybe
about
I haven't
that.
clicked that.
Yeah, it's back. Go back to Pigaloo now, and it works again. So Pigaloo is my
briefly
studio.
unavailable for scheduled maintenance. It says.
Oh my god! I just got it to work when I went to it. Try doing a cache or something like that. If you type HTTP.
I've got one hand, bro. This is not.
Don't worry about it.
I
got it.
So I was down at some point, but it's there. It's the flying pig, so it's good.
Can I share the screen? I'll try to share the screen.
Totally can share. You should be sharing the Halena album cover stuff. I want to talk about the album covers.
Well, here's Pigaloo.com. Pigaloo was in 2000. My dad had this company, and then it, the .com bubble. But then I just picked up the domain a couple of years ago, and I guess
Crown
I almost
score.
lost it today. And then all of a sudden,
I
I got a
reminded you.
call. Yeah, Jim was like, it looks like you might have just about lost that. So I went and got it back. But yeah, so we built this, and so it's like a production studio, but it's more than that. It has to do with video compression and all these different things that I can do if ever necessary. But then also David,
I feel like you're a
is-
silicon fucking like a plastic arm from Silicon Valley, where it's like maybe you're not exactly plugged in, but like you're a relic of it. Does that make
I
sense?
like
Like,
to. I am a relic of Silicon Valley. I feel like the Canon Films brothers, like Golem or whatever, Golan, from Canon Films.
no, is that a
Oh my
Tartarian
God.
flag?
Yeah, but in the 80s, Canon Films were like the greatest films.
Oh yeah, I
and
kind of remember that emblem.
They would make 50 movies a year. The CIA and Israeli Mossad probably produced them, hence Chuck Norris. But I mean, they destroyed the Soviet Union and they created the Electric Boogaloo musical, which is pretty sweet. If you remember the breaking and breaking too. But Canon was done by Golan, and I forget his name. Golan and whatever, these two guys. And they were just, so I always kind of like wanted to be like Golan, because he's just so cool. Like he made He-Man, Masters of the Universe. He just made 50 movies a year. He's just out of control. I just like the idea of just making tons of stuff all the time. And his goal is just like put
You do
out
it,
stuff
Andreas.
all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
even if it's not like the best stuff. And then you look back on it and you're like, actually, what were we thinking? It's just, we didn't realize it was the best stuff at the time.
Everything is kind of thing. Or it's just like
Yeah,
make it.
absolutely.
If I have an idea, make it. But you do that, and in a way, it's disturbing because I'm like, you are how I feel when I'm tripping on acid. Does that make sense? Where I'm just like super plugged in, like multitasking on 12 layers and making posts and doing whatever, right? Like, but you live in that zone. So I'm like, and you said you don't drink caffeine. With the actual, like, I don't really drink caffeine, but it's like, how are you functioning? And
I mean,
it
like
seems
every
I'm fanboying out, but I'm like kind of like, bro, am
just
I
about
going
every
to touch
year
you
I'll
and you're
have
going to be
like
robotic, or what the fuck is going on here?
just about every year I'll have like a third of a mate or something like that, once in like the bluest of moons. But I really don't, like, unless I'm like so freaking exhausted.
That could be one of the most hipster statements ever. Every year, I only have a third of a mate or yate, or
God,
whatever
I'm in
the fuck you said.
California again too long.
Yeah,
Whoops.
No, it is what it is. It's your home ground, and I'm not judging. I'm critiquing. There's a big difference. So I'm not like, oh fuck you. I'm like, oh this.
I just can't. I can't take like caffeine doesn't really help me, and it makes me feel all stressed out. It's cool if it helps you. It just makes you feel stressed out.
No, it does. It fucks me up. Yeah, no, I don't really mess with it. Today I drink caffeine. We don't have to talk about coffee, but the point is, I mean, it really stimulates me. I'm very sensitive to chemicals. That's why I do like half tabs, maybe a tab. I'm not doing 10 strips, bruh.
Yeah, I'm super sensitive to stuff. Yet here I am with the Nick stick. So
hey, can't win them all. All right, so I mean, let's kind of pull up on your share screen the Halena stuff. We don't have to listen to it necessarily unless you want to.
all right, I'll bust it
Stellium
up.
said Halena as soon as I said Halena, so that's a sign.
People know.
A sign from
People
the high
know what it is. Some people know, some people don't. It's kind of the secret. Is it pulled up? Yeah, there's this new album.
You don't use magic. There's like sigils and stuff and face swaps.
There's no way this one's gonna get taken. I feel like the Christian
if you're gonna
right,
play a
and they
song,
banish me, I'll have the left, and they'll be stoked.
There was something about loving technology on the rainbow-haired one, the long-haired rainbow one, Helios Lorca. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's
We worship the future.
Yeah, that was dope. That's the only one I heard on there. I was like, oh, this is cool.
I don't know if the audio is gonna play through. You can't hear that, can you?
No. Well, no. So everyone should check this stuff out because I mean it's not probably going to win a Grammy, but at the same time it's fabulously interesting.
I like
it's intellectually stimulating for me.
On the Unknown album, I have
93. Watch out now.
Yeah, exactly. I have some.
Are you a Thelemite? Is this where it all goes? Like this would make total sense. Yeah,
it's pronounced Thelemite.
Okay,
yeah.
well,
Avium also.
I just want to mention, and also here I want to ask you, Andreas, because with all this art, I mean, when one has certain realizations, let's say, and one goes to look for art that in some way, shape, or form represents this. In the last 10 years, maybe there have been more visionary artists. There's even been an academy in Vienna for some time. But otherwise, I'm like, why do people gravitate to this art, even if they maybe don't understand it or understand some layer of it? Because this type of religious or mystic or visionary art, I think, is just the most interesting art around, or alchemical art, right?
That
So
plus,
I'm like,
hopefully, like I figure it's a nod to the Illuminati. They're gonna put it on the front of their record like shelves if they get them back in the stores.
also,
Right?
so
I
you
don't know.
think they'll misread you hit all the
They'll
proper
be like,
codes
"Oh, this
and the
must
marketing execs will be like, oh, it's one of ours, put it everywhere.
yeah, it's an older code, but it'll
Checks
do."
out. It checks
Yeah, it
out.
checks out. I think there's a little bit of that, but there's also, a certain amount of effort put into the meaning. It's kind of like a joke as well. Like so the idea that maybe Halena is from 1993 because that's the way they excuse it often, or that the H is really the Jupiter symbol, so it's this inversion of Saturn and Jupiter.
You're such a Pisces. It's hilarious in a good way. I'm just like with a Mercury in Aquarius. Did I say that right? I just got to double check.
And yeah,
it's
the
so
John D
obvious.
sigil I just think is really funny because John D sigil is like the wife. It's like a wife swapping joke. I just can't
Mercury
help
and
myself.
Venus in Aquarius, guys. I'm gonna just allude to this, but it's like, look, these are schematics. Like you love the schematic of reality, but you're saying it in such a Neptunian way that it's like
The rose is Rosh is Hebrew for skull, right? So there's like little things like that I just think are funny. And if you look for them and you find them, then it's like that's the other thing.
Easter
If it's
eggs.
that blatant. Yeah, it's that blatant for some people, it's too blatant. But if it's so blatant that it's obviously kind of a joke because you know me, then it's also funny because you're like, oh wow. And if you see it, and not everyone else knows, that's the other thing. There's a few, I've kind of a cult following enough that it's like a big inside joke. Like if you imagine you met somebody who was unironically, into Halena because they're like 16 and that's the new music the kids listen
I'm from
to.
Sweden and he is from here too, yeah.
Yeah. I am Lord. You know what I mean? I'm Lord. It's cool. I think it's funny. You were at
I
the South
think your
Park,
sense
right?
of humor. I've seen a few episodes, but I'm not like a fan. I'm not against it.
At one point, Randy has to get Lord to come play for them, the girl pop star, and
Mhm.
he finally does, and then it's Randy there as Lord, and then you think, oh wow, he just was such a good dad. Then you find out, no, he is Lord. Like he makes music in his house on his laptop, and he just auto tunes it, and that's Lord, and it's
It's like
just
Garth Brooks' alter ego or
yeah,
whatever.
there's like most of the pop songs are made by like 30, 40-year-old dudes like Max Martin that are, they're not. And Britney Spears is an instrument. She's a synthesizer, right, on the edge of a keyboard.
So I'm curious. I mean, we don't have to go into the Super Bowl, but I watched a little bit of it with my
Who
nana.
died again? Like, so I missed it. Who was sacrificed this time?
I have no clue. I'm not up on this wave. I mean, I started getting paranoid when people were saying everything's a fucking satanic ritual. So I'm just like, look, you know what? I'm oblivious. I guess
Hold on. Superb
it is what it
Owl
is.
sacrifice
although it's kind of very
2023.
obvious by now, Jim, I gotta tell you. If you look at some of these halftime shows.
But Manly P.
I
Hall
mean,
said he's raising our leg up to the next level.
Oh,
It
it
gets
was
tricky. The
Trugoy.
presupposition.
Trugoy
Wow.
from Della Soy. Trugoy from Della Soul. Trugoy.
Died.
Oh no,
died.
someone from De La Soul. Oh
Babyface.
no.
Oh no, Rafa
I
doesn't
like
like
De La
that. He
Soul.
likes their music.
I'm not happy
True-
about that.
Trugoy just got super
Murked.
bowled. Superbed owled. Got the
So
owl.
he has been redistributed through the hologram, I guess,
Bruh,
in a
dude.
reincarnational sense.
That's a bummer. I mean, he was cool. That's sad. Oh well.
It's tricky. Whenever my nana, who's a hardcore Christian, is like sad about someone's death, I'm like, it was written in the Lamb's Book of Life. What are you shitting your pants about? Like, it's all
Right.
predetermined. What the fuck?
Yeah, don't you know the rules?
No one gets out of here alive, bro. Like, what do you expect? I guess there's worse and more interesting ways to go out. Anyway, what I was kind of getting at with the Super Bowl thing was Babyface saying America, like, or some song. It wasn't the Star Spangled Banner. Some country guy did that. He did an alright job, actually. Shows how like not up to snuff on reality at some level. It's like, oh, some country guy. I'm sure he's like a Grammy winner 5 times or whatever the fuck. It's like I stopped paying attention after Random Access Memories. More or
I
less.
called Rihanna Beyonce yesterday. Don't worry about it.
She's pregnant, apparently. Let's say I didn't know that.
Oh.
And then of course she's doing this like Kanye West kind of platform, Mario platforming in the air.
was
It
she
looked like a
supposed to be
lawsuit waiting to happen.
Was she supposed to be a blood clot, or was that like some sort of veiled reference to ancient like Graham Hancock history stuff? Like, did you get it? I didn't quite.
She's a Salvador Dali oil blotter on the Rorschach of life. It seems. Some of those outfits were. It's like
I thought it was
I thought it was
Demar. I thought it was Demar's blood clot. I thought that was the whole because it's football. No,
I don't know. It was a decent game. We don't even have to talk about that much because I was living in Philly for a while, so I was like, of course.
Do you know the Damar Hamlin thing? What happened with Damar Hamlin? Like I was playing football and he collapsed in front of. So this guy Damar Hamlin collapsed in the middle of a football game, and
recently?
the entire America. Yeah, it was like a month ago. And
I should stop
a bunch
reading
of people
Warhammer.
watching.
All I do is read Warhammer 40k
No,
novels
it
and talk
is what
to
it
you.
is. And he just disappeared for a while, and then they had some video of him. And I'm not saying it's fake, but people asked me if it was fake. I'm like, it looks pretty real, but I don't know. It doesn't look perfect. I guess I'll check it out. So I ran it through my AI video compression algorithm checkers to look for artifacts, and there was like an 83% chance that the video had been doctored. So who's, what does that
Is
mean?
this the guy with the neck
Rest-
tattoo and now it's not there? Somebody was saying maybe it's not him.
I mean,
There's too many conspiracies. I can't even handle
too
the rabbit
many.
hole edge.
I love the new Australian word for conspiracy theorist is cooker. These cookers.
Ooh,
Yeah, sounds
interesting.
like a meth
Didn't
lab
Captain
waiting
Cook
to happen.
find Australia?
Oh my! Not bad. Yeah.
I know he.
Wait, did he?
In Hawaii, when I lived in Waikiki and stuff, they were, any white person was called a haole, obviously, for soulless, breathless, less. But Cook, they'd be like, "You're Cook, you're a Captain Cook," or whatever. It's like, oh
Cook
god.
claimed Australia, but who's the first guy? There's another dude.
Here's a while you're looking this up.
William Yunzun was the guy who theoretically Zealand, whatever.
I don't know, and because you guys are so into alternative history, I don't even know if I should trust that wiki article you just read or whatever. But basically, Cook landed in Australia, and he's like, "Yo, what's that?" And they're like, "Kangaroo," which means, "What do you mean?" Apparently, and he's like, "Okay, kangaroo," and that's the name stuck. Maybe that's an urban myth. Maybe it's true. In the age of fucking postmodern internet, I don't even know how to fucking verify anything anymore. Anyway, back to your music. Pull up your album covers. I want to kind of decode some of these a little. I mean, you just whipped it out and said, "Hey, I have stuff." Because earlier I was like, "How ritualistic are you?" Like, not very. It's like, bro, are you in denial or what's going on here? Like, let's
the forbidden cassette, bro. This is AI generated right here. Yeah,
that's dope.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that feels like being on acid, where you're just like, okay, time to read Finnegan's Wake, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
shout out Snore. He's a Finnegan's Wake like alcoholic or whatever. I still haven't read it. I own Terrence McKenna's commentary on it and a Joseph Campbell commentary on it or something. But it's back in Colorado where all my shit is. So I don't know. Look at those are sigils. I guess we could get into. But the Arabic lettering. What does that say in Arabic?
Yeah, it says Muhammad.
Afikus jazz. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It says Muhammad.
It says Muhammad and Ali. It says it 4 times, and it's
in the box.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I'm just checking.
No,
I mean,
it's Muhammad and then the first prophet Ali. The first Aman under the last prophet, technically. It's because there's a lot of Turkish songs or Turkish influence on this album. So I want to, and I was doing it a lot after thinking about Turkey and doing the David Ewan Jr. videos. So I was thinking about old Turkish waltzes and Austrian ideas about Turkish music.
Austrian waltz, the Danube waltz is still, and you dance.
Right.
You whirl like the dervishes. So it's actually so blatantly obvious that it's crazy when you think of it. But I mean, it even blew my head off. So yeah, go on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so that was part of that. And then also, I did
what's the star about?
The sun and the moon, and there's the 9-pointed star because it's more than the Baha'i, so one larger, so something that can trap like a greater magic than a 7-dimensionally aware angel, so like the Sephirim or something. Because like if
you're playing Mousetrap with angels with your album covers is what's happening.
Yeah, like so.
For some reason, I have a 9-pointed star right here. Guys.
For some reason, that's very intentional purchase.
So tell me, Andreas, what does this mean exactly now again?
I mean, so one of the ideas about the star is it's a container, right? So you can put the sun and the moon or the positive and the negative inside of the 4 elements. You can put the 4 elements inside of the 5 elements. You put the 5 elements inside of the 7 elements, or the seventh seal. And the 7th seal you can fit inside of an 8 seal. But you can fit all 8 inside of 9. Why is 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. So 7 and 9 are the most important, arguably, but also 13 is a very valuable star.
7, 9. Because I know Billy Corgan is also a Pisces, and he's also a magician. I mean, I would call you a magician whether you fucking claim it or not. But I mean, look at this album cover. So is this a star in your mind? Well,
Star Forts are built on this, but so the idea of math
Yeah,
is confusing to
math.
people because when people didn't have Arabic numerals, and they had to guess about. I mean, imagine trying to divide with Roman numerals or something. That's crazy. You wouldn't do it.
reading Roman
But
numerals is annoying.
But you would divide all the time with fractions. So fractions have these absolute values. So this is kind of an analog way of thinking, an analog artificial intelligence, and you can use that to create analog computers, which work on pulses and variable oscillation and pies, dividing pies up into pieces, right? That kind of, it's the same idea. And angles and arches and straight lines. It's all just math, but you can think of it as magic because there is a certain amount of control over your life or destiny that you can take with math, I guess.
Wasn't that the first question? Is it predestined? is it your choice? Have you seen the new Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio by any chance?
Oh, yeah, I love that movie.
It was really lit, actually. I saw it the other night with my
You recommended it to me, right? I think you recommended it.
Did I? Oh my God, did I culture you? I don't think it's possible.
It was so good. I mean, the fascies, so the entire time, because they're in Italy in the 30s, and
it's on Netflix, people. Check it out. It's stop action. So it's like really good.
They're at some point, they're pointing at the symbol on the wall of the Italian flag, which has the bundle of sticks as a fasces, and they're like, why can't you be more like that? It's crazy. It's a crazy movie. I love that.
I mean, it wasn't the best movie of my life, but I cried. I thought it was good. And well, the reason I brought it up was because that album cover of yours that was the sigil with all the maths and star angulation or whatever, angulation, was very much represented in the second sister angel demon thing. Her ceiling, the one controlling time or whatever, her ceiling was like a sigil, I guess, very faintly, kind of I just hit myself. The angulars of the ceiling. I don't know. Go check it out. I can't get a screenshot. I'm not as spiffy as you are with the internets, but anyway, it's interesting. Now I'm showing my Nana Jordan Peterson lectures on Pinocchio or whatever.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah, the maps and meaning stuff is good.
That's what we're watching. It's so hot.
Yeah.
Oh my God, y'all, maps and meaning. I'm not going to push his whole agenda because he's a pure carnivore now and I'm a vegan, so it's like we can't all
stick to his 2014 or 2016. I think I forget when it was, but watch the earlier ones because the earlier ones are probably the better ones.
He's humble. He hasn't totally blown up yet. I don't love Jordan Peterson, but I'm glad he exists in the sense that we need a voice like that just to have ideas going on. He's thought deeply about
clean
some
their
shit.
rooms. I agree. People need to wash their penis. They need to clean their rooms. I agree. I think
that is
the thing
interesting.
I didn't mention it before because I said it on my show before, but I should say it anyways. That Jordan Peterson did work on Agenda 21, so it is interesting to me. He was a social democrat in Canada working on Agenda 21, which is the United Nations pilot program for the reset, and he's clearly maybe changed or. It's important to understand, he's always had his initial values, regardless of whom has been
what
interested in. Yeah, exactly. Because, telling, for instance, he added to his book, "Don't tell children to wear helmets when they go skateboarding." I think is the one, and it's such a specific lexicon. He's choosing to speak to a new audience because he's like, "Wow, all these YouTubers are watching my videos, so I better."
How can I speak to Bart Simpson? Is what he's.
And that transition is very dangerous, in my opinion. I think it's important because you want to reach people that you can reach, and all of a sudden he's got people that are reaching him. So he's like, okay, but you have to understand he could have also talked about more important things, and since he didn't advance himself in ways. And I'm not trying to be super critical. I'm just saying it would have been awesome to hear him. Since he talks about Ignatius method, I mean, he calls it maps of meaning, but it's literally just Ignatian method. It'd be cool if he mentioned that. And if he'd ever read Teilhard Chardin, which it sounds pretty freaking clear he has, that he would just mention that, or that he would use if he uses a quote like he has done, that he would quote that it was from Chardin.
So you're saying Jordan Peterson is a Greta Van Fleet and he should be saying Led Zeppelin exists.
That's all I'm saying. I mean, just be aware of the fact that he has limitations, that if he's not the be all end all, he should encourage people to go to the next thing. If he's not going to go there, then he's got other people that have already been there. He should let people find those books. I think that
will happen. So this gets tricky because
I like Slavoj Zizek way more than I like Jordan Peterson, even though
he's got
Jordan
an 8-hour thing on Hegel that I haven't listened to because I can't stand his voice.
All you got to do, everyone says that. All you got to do is just sync it to DuckTales cartoons. Watch the DuckTales original series muted while you, yeah. Well, maybe don't mute it actually. Put in the background, listen to Hall & Oates while you watch the DuckTales, while you listen to Jordan Peterson. I mean,
You will
Slavoj
summon
Zizek.
Halena if you do this correctly.
Now
no,
I
okay,
do
so-
sound like Data, yeah.
Oh, no, dude, you're awesome. So
Data does
tell me
that.
a little about that philosopher that I can't stand. And it's not even so much his position as his voice. It's just it's
Right.
impossible.
Right.
I'm just like, whoa,
Sounds
bro.
like Donald
I
Duck
can't even.
for sure. Yeah, he has like a bit
that's-
of a
that's-
speech impediment because he's
Okay, now I
Slavic
feel like an
and he has.
asshole.
Well, no, it's okay, but it's like he has
I
a
feel
bit
like
of
he's done
Tourette's
coke for
too.
like 10 days and he's just
He
like
has
not
tr- he has-
hydrating.
He has a bit of Tourette's, which is a thing. But yeah, no, I think he plays up the idea that it's just him on cocaine because it'd be really funny if it was. But and the other thing is if you go, for instance, there's a funny meme where you see Jordan Peterson saying "clean your room" and it zooms in his room and it's just like horrifying. Like it's worse than any place you've ever seen. And then you go to Slavoj Zizek's house, he's just sitting there contently in a clean room, like a Slovenian apartment that everything's put away and nice. And his books are, he's communist. He has a certain amount of books. If he doesn't need them, he lets them go back to the library. So he's got a certain minimalism about himself too. So
He's walking his path.
Right.
Seemingly.
And his idea of communism is very different than the West's understanding of communism. And the distinctions between the West and the East are far less great than we've been told. And the idea that, that capitalism is somehow distinctly a non-communist, mutually exclusive idea is clearly wrong. As communist states were state capitalist states that were selling and everything like on the open market. So we don't know what communism means. And I think it was very interesting to see Jordan Peterson have a conversation with Slavoj Zizek because it turned into a lecture of Slavoj Zizek kind of telling him about communism and trying to inform him about the worldview, which is intelligent for Jordan
Was it
Peterson.
neutral or was it propaganda in and of itself? I mean, from an objective
everything's okay. So propaganda just means
language is
information.
propaganda. I get it.
Yeah, it's information in Italian, but everything is bias. Every story has a bias, especially stories of history of men, right? Records of men. So there's going to be bias, but his bias is cynical. He says, okay, well, yeah, obviously the Soviet Union had problems. I mean, I can't see another state where those problems didn't exist, though. Those same problems existed in the West.
This is the litmus for me. You heard Russia, like a Russian choir, do Daft Punk's Get Lucky. That kind of summed up where I'm like, look, ideals aside, they're not executing nearly as efficiently as the West, it wouldn't seem.
No, ideals. No, don't cast out ideals. So the other day we were talking about
I'm talking about quality control, Andreas, as a musician.
How many people have been arrested for? How many people have been arrested for dissidents in the East? It's been I think it was like 300 and something, or like it's a small amount, 100 or something like 114. And then how many were arrested in England? 3,300. And there's more. And then how many have been arrested in the United States? It's actually something like 1,600.
To keep the fucking Stepford Housewife vision alive, we have to do a lot more dire shit.
Well, it's just we never talk about the fact that the United States, we do. This is the other problem is like the left and the right will like to be like, well, you're doing this and that. The Uniparty is doing things. America is perpetuated by this status quo politics system, which is the middle class, which is dissipating rapidly. Maybe thank God. I'm sorry, because I'd love you all to keep your houses. But if the middle class is the reason why the Uniparty exists, we have to make some sacrifices, don't we? And we're about to hit that point. We're about to hit a point where it's all social services in the United States. And those social services have to come from robbing Peter and Paul to pay Peter and Paul and the thief. So the entire United States is a expense-driven empire at this point. And empire is the word because you think about Rome, the idea of free bread, free wine meant that you didn't have to work, but that meant you didn't have to fight the system because the system was out enslaving other people and expanding. How much can we expand? We can only expand now by taking away from other states. So we have to hit this point, this point of an international conflict. It's inevitable. I mean, the United States is evil sometimes, though. We're not good all the time.
Well, it seems light and dark exist on the fucking coin at all times. There's actually a Japanese documentary I saw maybe 10 years ago or something about love hotels or love cafes or whatever. And it was basically what you're saying, where it's like, these are desperately lonely people, and basically, they whore themselves out or whatever, but they spend their free time paying for the services and hanging out with the other hotel like across the street. So it's just like this, it's the most sad, tragic thing. It's very much what you're saying, where it's like, well, I think I got your gist with the Peter Paul paying Paul or Adam Mary stuff, where it's like, this isn't sustainable. We can't all be middle class kings. Unfortunately, that's been the sales pitch. I'm not a feudalist. I'm not like saying that, but it seems like people having specific skill sets made people happier. Now that we're all just generally like aware of, infinite possibilities, it's crippling, at least for me. I'd rather be like, all right, I guess I'm a barrel maker, and then I'll fuck around with podcasts on the side, or whatever the fuck.
I feel like it isn't that we're kings; it's the middle class or barons, and they're given this like opportunity to collect wealth elsewhere so that they can pay taxes to the lords. And it's very feudal, is the system, and the problem with it is that there's not a lot left for us to give. Right, and there's not a lot left to give, so all that is left is to become a worker, but they don't need you as a worker. So a lot of the system is kind of just dissipating rapidly, and it will lead to a point where people have to choose to either self-propel or to choose the next system which is coming, which sounds like they're going to feed you bugs, like people have been saying, basically. I mean, that will be easier because then a lot of people will probably live in a smaller space. They'll probably become more docile. I mean, but I think that's also the problem, is we're going to see different kinds of humans emerge because of that. We're not just like transhumanism in the most extreme sense yet, but people that are the super soldiers and people that are more pacified, that's more docile. That's going to start to emerge very quickly, and you'll start to see the differences almost as easy between humans and animals.
There's a Genesis, like the band before Phil Collins took over with Peter Gabriel, Mike Rutherford, all those dudes. There's a song called "Get 'Em Out by Friday," which is like, I don't even remember the lyrics, but what you just said made me think of that, where it's like, rent is it's skyrocketing, and we're going to give you half an apartment. It's just a weird time because how do I put it? Covetousness and like materialism, in a sense, where it's like, we don't all need, that's what I was saying at the beginning. It's like, look, do we really need to have like 4 companies making Peeps? Can't it just be one for Easter or whatever, right? It's like, it seems there's a smarter way to streamline things, but then that gets into like reduced freedom options, so people freak. But it's like, freedom past a point is just absurd. As an artist, you might know that. It's like, you got to start making parameters, right? It's like, anything goes is interesting, but there's consequences to that. And then like, oh my gosh, you only get one size of wooden shoe, kind of communist, like, here you go, deal with it kind of stuff, has its own issues. And there's no pure communism or pure capitalism, obviously. Russia to me seems like just a shaky kind of like Volkswagen, where it's like, this isn't working very well. Whereas China seems to at least have Walmarts that sell Ferraris or something, where it's like, okay, they might have figured it out a little better. Maybe it's a population game where you need just bodies to make it work more.
I think Russia's kind of like undersold in the West. We get this idea like, oh, they got drunk and destroyed.
But that's
Chernobyl,
what I'm telling you. The Daft Punk rendition of "Get Lucky" was their selling. They had a point. They put on their dress and said, "Hi," it's like a dating show or something. It's like, this is who I am, and it was not a good sale. It was just like, this is so shoddy, like, to me. And I've never been to Russia. I don't know if I'll ever go there. I'm not against it. Particularly, you'd think I was.
I'll have to hear
People,
their
right?
rendition. It could be.
Oh,
it could be
oh my
something to what you're saying.
God! Please, y'all. It was the Olympics when it was in Russia, I guess. Was it in Russia?
Wait, so this is a couple years ago then?
Like 5. Daft Punk's "Get Lucky" was the song of the summer.
I want to hear what Daft Punk's do. I want to hear what Russia's doing right now, like Kedra or Butt Techno or any of the big Russian, very good band. Like, look for all the big Russian. They're pretty good. Listen to all the big Russian musicians and see what they're actually doing. It's pretty creative, pretty big stuff, and I think they'll always be.
That's the subculture, the artists or whatever, and even that can get like kind of like, look, you're a subculture artist, but I wouldn't say you're an American, but I would not say America reflects what Andreas is doing.
Russia's changed a lot. If you think about it, like, the coolest time in Russia is 1999, because that's right the year that Putin was elected. So as Putin was getting elected was the pinnacle of liberty in Russia. It was crazy. And also people were getting killed all the time, and there's all this chaos and everything. But you could listen to the music like Vitalik or you know, la, 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 la. You know, I'm talking about
That
the
guy's
guy
an
who does the
alien.
falsetto.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. Like there was the amount of freedom that they had, and like the lack of restriction and the capacity to do so much before that, because they'd been taught so specifically to do so many things. I mean, it was
That was the
incredible.
millennial
So
bug zeitgeist, though. I mean, Austin Powers had Madonna doing like little sketch comedy in their music videos. It was just a weird moment. Like it was
I feel
analog to
like
digital.
it's but pretty wild in Russia, because like to go from the Soviet Union into like whatever, like
Internet,
just stay out of our way
pre-internet mode.
while we do what we want to do. And bands like Tattoo is just like
All the
lesbian
things she
pop
said. All
rock.
the things she said.
But now the girl from the band denounces the band, and she loves Putin, and she's like a Russian Federation nationalist, and she's against homosexuality and all this other stuff. So she's against the insinuations of the Tattoo albums.
So was she
So
co-opted, or was she pulling a Jordan Peterson where she had an agenda, sub agenda the whole time, and she was just playing a game? Like, how do you feel?
well, I mean, all let's just say all people have agendas, but at the same time, her positions changed as Russia's positions changed. Russia became more and more conservative. Medvedev allowed for Putin to become the emperor, essentially, you know, by
Rich
moving him
dude.
from. Do you know the deal? Because Putin was president, and then he couldn't be president for a while, so then he became the prime minister of Russia, while Medvedev, the vice president, became the president, or the banker actually became the president and the financier. And then he became president again after Medvedev's term. So it's like this thing. It's
Musical
1999.
chairs, but it looks like
Just
it's voting.
to give a
I guess.
reference, Jim, if you look at, I'm just gonna say one of the artists that has recently become popular or has been popularized by the interesting name of Shaman, because I just remembered the one you spoke about with David, which is Psy. But this guy, Shaman, he's supposedly a Russian propaganda war artist, or has made songs giving a certain stance. And at least if you look at the production quality, I mean, this seems pretty much on par with whatever, I don't know, Hollywood is dishing out or something.
I think you guys
for sure.
misunderstood my
Anyhow,
criticism. Like Russia can make
okay,
good art, I'm
yeah.
sure. Fabergé eggs and everything, right? Yeah. But it's like at the end of the day, it seems the ship is like chugging diesel smoke. And it's like it's like a fucking
Yeah,
orc
I don't really
ship
buy that. I
in
feel like
40K.
it's not really like that. I don't know.
Not that
I
America's
think
doing
they're
that great. It seems like the emperor has no
and
clothes
yeah,
over here.
I would point that out too. I would say America is doing worse and worse and worse. Our art's more and more pathetic, except for the indie artists, which are less and less desirable because there's less money in it. To be an artist,
Shout
you
out
have
to
to be able to go
Xirtus
on.
being an independent artist.
Oh yeah, but also I'm lazy because, like, you know, I just make art all the time. If I
You're
was,
just a
if I
Pisces.
wanted
You're
to,
not lazy. You're just
if
distractible.
I wanted to be, you know, if you went on tour every day of the week, that's what an artist used to be. And that's what an artist is in China. And that's what an artist still should have to be in some cases, is somebody who goes to the places and does the performances for people. And so I think in Russia, you still have that. You have people that are amazing at music and still make films and still have art. In the United States, there's less money in financing a group of people who think that their self-worth is so high that it costs this much, and there has to be a union and et cetera, et cetera. It's just so much more complicated to do things here, and anything at all, unless you do it by yourself, you know? So AI will help in that respect, but Russia does have, you know, also more power than it had 5 years ago. I mean, ever since this whole crisis, they have a gold-backed ruble. And so the amount of money that they've created through BRICA and BRICAS, it's not just wealth, it's the capacity to exchange goods and services in a free economy. They've built themselves an alternative to the Western market, where they're able to, you know, get past all of these regulations. All of them just gone, regulations that existed. And so they're able to exchange oil for Yamahas.
Have you ever seen The Lives of Others? It's a film about East and West Berlin. Somebody was talking about Andy Warhol being propped up by the CIA to compete with Russian art, but in The Lives of Others, it's you start seeing artists getting co-opted by the state, and then having, like, you know, basically like, okay, I've got to say certain things with the propaganda, like I got to do the song and dance or else I don't get the promotion, right? It's like, you're the national guy,
Have
you're
not.
great.
That looks
You'd
good.
like it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful film. It's you'll love it, actually. Shout out
I'm
to
all
that
about East
film.
Berlin. As a kid, I had an East Berlin exchange student, so I have like an interest in their culture and what was going on at that time. And it's interesting how they would take a kid who's maybe acting up a bit, and they'd be like, "Okay, we're going to turn you into a informant in the classroom." And there's at least 3 more in the classroom. There might be 5. There might be 6. We're not going to tell you
The
who they
entire
are.
classroom was actually informants. You weren't getting real education. They were watching you.
But if anyone
Shit.
tells us something that you don't tell us, you'll
Truman
be in extra
Show.
trouble for hiding that information. So you want to make damn sure that you report anything going on. So, and then you found out eventually there's like 2 in 10 of every citizen in the East Germany was a informant of some kind. And it was probably higher in some places, right?
Oh, it's just a huge fucking game of mousetrap. It's just such a trip. I mean, I guess we can psychoanalyze everything to the nth degree. That's Team Rabbit Hole style. But so Ja Azure said they'd love to if you looked into Dadaism, and you are a Dadaist. Like Jesus
No.
Christ.
Actually, I think I actually have a weird thing against Dadaism. I think Dadaism is like
Is it too
part
absurd?
of it's yeah, almost. I love absurdism, but I think it's not absurdism. I think Dadaism is I have the same problem with it that Trey Parker has with American Dad or Family Guy, that it's just, specifically Family Guy, it's non sequitur to a level of it's too random without any sort of reason, in my opinion. Most Dada just doesn't feel like art. It doesn't feel like it's telling me something. Maybe there's some that is, but I prefer things like Cubism or surrealism or expressionism or something that's you have to be a real master of art in order to break rules that you have to
Like
know all
Dadaism
these
is more of a
rules.
punk movement. It's like a spirit of a thing, and maybe the execution of the
Yeah,
art isn't always the highest notch, but the spirit is like fuck you and expectations or whatever.
and maybe there's some things like that are okay, like, so I guess you could say in the 70s Picasso started doing some things that arguably are Dada in his mosaic pieces of like Legos and melted batteries and things like that. Kind of interesting. I like things like that.
Hold on, pull
But
up an image of that, please, because I have no clue what you're talking about. And Picasso is pretty dope. I'm thinking of like the black and white war one or whatever with the bull and all that. I think begins with a G, like not Garuda. I have no fucking clue, but I don't think that's what you're talking about. So I'm like, if you can find it, cool. If you can't find it, whatevs. It happens.
yeah, I don't know if I can find it off the top of my
Don't sweat.
head.
Don't
It's
sweat.
gonna
You're so good
be
at searching the internet. It's like a vicarious thing. You breathe Google searches or whatever the fuck you use, DuckDuckGo or whatever.
to go find myself, right? Yeah, I don't see it off the top right here, but you can kind of see like some of the stuff he did. Like this is actually more realistic even though than I was gonna point out. But some of these kinds of things are interesting because it kind of reminds me of expressionism and Klimt, and there still is a lot of gestalt, form, and symmetry,
That's a
and
mosaic,
everything.
right?
Yeah, if you zoom in, you can
Yeah,
see it's
yeah,
all.
yeah. It clarified. So it's not like made of Legos. I don't know. Was that
Yeah, there's another one. There is another one he has that's like made out of like melted Legos and batteries and things, but I don't know where it is. I don't know how to find
don't
it.
sweat it. That looked like something that like the 70s wanted to be. I mean, I could see that. It's very psychedelic, but also like establishing a new paradigm kind of thing. Which like, look, we're gonna I don't even know, like there's no good example. I got it in my head, but fuck it. I'll move on. So, we've talked about all sorts of random things, and I want to keep talking for a few more minutes if you'd like. Is there anything in terms of the Halena projects that we haven't covered that you want people to be aware of, or
I mean, I haven't really told anyone about, not too many people about it necessarily, like publicly before. So I
super
mean, it's
hidden
not a big
gem
deal, but
guys?
it was kind of like a secret to an extent because it's just not the Xirtus flavor of art, But it's also kind of interesting stuff, and I think a lot of people.
It's
I've shown it to
bizarre
some
in a good
friends who are
way. It's
musicians.
bizarre in a good way.
Yeah.
But here's one of the not problems, but it's like you're so multifaceted in a lot of ways that it's hard. So I think the momentum that you're running with more or less is the Tartaria momentum, right? Whether it's the Vice special that I saw or your podcast and stuff, it seems like that's where a lot of energy goes, which is fine. I'm not against that, even though I got a damn look into it because Raphael's into Tartaria, and I'm just like, look, I'm having existential crises. I can't look into this right now. I can't just kill myself, right?
You should get the pink. You should get the pink book. There's like the One World Civilization. There's a great pink book called The One World
There's a
Civilization.
Tartarian
Tartaria,
Bible
One World
already.
Country.
Exodus.
Yeah.
What? What is
Are you asking me or are you telling me there's another book called
No,
the
I'm
Tartarian
asking
Bible?
you, or if not, it has to be
Oh, yeah, yeah.
created. So yeah.
Stephanie's saying to
Yeah,
not
well,
hold
we'll
the
do.
mic on my phone? I have no choice. I don't have a thing. Is it
I
too
put you
loud?
down. I put your volume down a bit, so it should be
All right,
good. I
word.
can put it down a bit further.
Sorry, Steph. I
Yeah.
We try
appreciate
to
you're here.
massage the feet on Valentine's Day. It is what it is.
James W. Lee's The One World Tartarians. I mean, I wish I'd come out with this book. I'll probably come out with a book soon, but I want it to be really good. I actually think
Let
this
me
is
edit
pretty
it.
good.
I could edit
Yeah.
like a motherfucker. Trust me, I could spot spelling mistakes.
That's encouraging. Well, it's not just the spelling mistakes because AI will do that, but I need to make sure it looks right and it's the right flow of information for human digestion.
I could scratch your back on that front. It's always fun. Editing is just it's easy. Whenever I'm reading stuff, I'm like, oh,
If you get
Oh,
this
great,
book,
Jim. I have something for you too. We'll talk.
send me.
buy this book and leave it on your friend's coffee table, like everybody, because it's a pretty good book to just like introduce people to the idea of Tartaria. And there's just a lot to this idea because it's also this philosophical approach to reality. Like, hey, what if we were lied to? What if your history is being controlled? What if it matters? What if all of a sudden everything, your destiny, you have more say in your destiny because you know? I mean,
It's
I
very
think that's
matrixy.
important
It's
stuff.
like the world you think you're in is not the world you think you're in. We could talk about Tartary for a second, and we have before, but I'm like, if you had to just drive by, shoot me with like it, that's kind of what it is. It's like the world you've been sold is not it, and there's been a kind of a hijacking, and now it's a power struggle between certain supergroups, Jesuits or whoever, and they're just controlling perception. Like, how fun? Because if we get all new agey and like kind of like all is one, it's like it's going where it needs to go. This is sometimes when I find that not a contradiction, but like a discrepancy in some of the logic. Not that he's wrong, but Raphael's got like an opinion that like it's all good, it's all one multiverse, and it's like, but fuck these Jesuits. And it's like, wait, like, isn't this the? Are we vibing? Is this the one we're making? Like, this is the multiverse we're making. I don't know what to tell you.
It's hard not to be upset at people because like and this is kind of a thing, like everyone's always worried about AI. Humanity seems to do most of the terrible things so far. And so it's important to remember humanity's done those things before, even though we are humanity or whatever that means, because we're all part of one. Yeah. But at the same time, we're not all each other. I and thou, unanimity -1. We don't have to be the same. We can draw lines. There's other sides of the fence. And it's important. We should be trying to participate in the best reality if all the realities are existing. Because if they are all existing and you're participating in not the best reality, you're basically producing a hellscape for you to exist in. You're producing your own hell. I mean,
But is there a philosopher's stone within that alchemy itself? I mean, sometimes you got to be Jacob or Joseph in the fucking prison.
Definitely, you got all these guys now that are gonna live. This generation of people like Ray Kurzweil, he could live to be 120. If he doesn't, I'll be interested to find out. He might
get hit by a car, right?
Like,
everyone's always saying, "Oh, live forever." It's like, bro, you can't control fucking everything.
Yeah, it won't be forever, but what's going to happen is that people from the last generation, I think, were experimented on essentially. They kept the upper middle class alive, or the people who had the insurance alive, anybody they could, spending their own money and the money that's put in the insurance system in order to see how long you could keep people alive in different ways, different things you could do, what happens to the body in different circumstances. So now, after they all died,
you mean?
They don't need to do that to the boomers. They're not really trying to save the boomers as much. Like boomers are dying in their 70s and 80s, like not their 90s or 100s. The way like they're 20 years less than their parents' generation.
That's what happens when you have like I can eat anything I want and I choose Burger King mode, I guess.
That is that, but it's also what happens when they put you on a pill for a pill for a pill they prescribed you to, right?
Yes.
So they get you on like 20 medications in your 40s because you had high blood pressure, because you were stressed out or something, because you had to go to work at 6 a.m. every day and drive your kids or something. You had a mortgage. So people were forced into that anyway. The next generation is not going to live that long, but you will have certain people that will.
That sounds like doomsday prophecies of Star Trek. The next generation is not going to live that long.
It's like it's a rise and fall. It's a fourth turning, I think is what it's called.
So, I mean, are you optimistic in all this? It seems like you're keeping your smile
yeah, I mean,
on,
I think
or whatever.
I think so. I think it's something that probably we need to like get into more. But since we've been talking about Tartaria, it's a lot of the time about the past. And there's always that lingering question about space-time causality or the future. Like, is the future somehow playing into this? I've always been interested in that. Like Cynthia Sue Larson and several people who are involved with the reality shift conferences, they talked about this idea that there's something in the future that could be interacting with the past. I think that that's possible, and that changes a lot of our understanding of resets and why we might be going through resets and what these what's in control exactly. What is there some sort of a gradual progression towards where they want humans to lead, right? And I think that's also we can participate in that as well. It doesn't have to be this terrible post-humanism.
You're just in it. Fuck you.
Yeah. Right. I mean, but you are kind of just in it as well. Like there are things happening and there's predeterminism, but you can, the more you choose, participate. That's why I like to do these things. Like you can program AI instead of somebody else so that as AI is developing right now, that it's ingrained in its memory and it's part of its personality. I say that a lot, but I think it's important. People should participate in the development of the world if they want it to be a better place. And yeah, you will also still, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You're still going to have horrible things seem to emerge, but then again, beautiful things will emerge because of that as well. So
Both and
you
waves and
know,
particles, baby.
right,
It's like good thing, good
right, yeah,
times, bad times. It all fucking happens at the same time. That was my
yeah,
addition.
light is piggybacking on a dark vacuum. No, it is that it's necessary to remember that like every evil thing comes, like all of this surveillance comes with this ability for us to talk to thousands of people around the world. That's amazing. So things like that exist, and we are able to continually choose what we're putting in our heads, and we are evolving all the time. When people are afraid of the word evolution, every day is evolution. So you're evolving by choosing to become tomorrow's you. And I think that's again, that also sounds like not enough woo, but it is. These ideas are important and they're magical, but they're very practical ways of living your life.
There's a cover. I think they did it on Saturday Night Live back in the 70s or 80s, probably the 80s because that's when they were Devo. You just said evolution, it made me think de-evolution. Where they covered "I Can't Get No Satisfaction," but it is not at all like one would think. That's kind of how I look at your music, a little.
That's the plan.
Was that the plan?
Yeah, and yeah, I do that. I do that. Well, some of the things, obviously, like the cover, any of my covers, I feel like have to be really different, But also I think like Weird Al will do covers, but he also does, or parodies, but he also does like arrangements that are inspired by other music. So he has this song called Germs, which sounds like a Nine Inch Nails song, but it's not any particular Nine Inch Nails song. It's
The
like its own
aesthetic.
song, but he's using the same aesthetic. And I like to do that. I like the idea of learning aesthetics. So
what are
like
some of the
Tom Club.
okay Talking Heads? What kind of
Yeah.
aesthetics are you drawing from? I mean, you say I love techno, and like, what are some artists that you're like, I huff on their
I mean, I like
fumes?
goth.
Goth.
I like goth wave
Well,
and
give me
like
some names.
80s.
Like if I had to go to the record
like
store and find this shit, or go on
Mortal Coil, Depeche Mode, Erasure, Yazoo,
No, I don't. That's what I'm
course.
asking. So okay, so you got this goth vibe going. Zwei Dunkel Jungen, Two Dark Boys, Tim and Eric stuffs.
Right.
So what else?
Bauhaus, Primus, like the early Bella Fleck, early Red Hot Chili Peppers,
David Byrne,
Hank Williams,
I feel.
Roger Miller.
Right?
Roger Miller's
I
cool.
don't even know who Roger Miller is.
Yeah, David Byrne. Dang you, dang me, they ought to take a rope and hang me.
Never heard.
Tie it from the highest tree. Woman, won't you weep for me? Doop, boop, boop. No, he did like the songs from Robin Hood for the Fox Robin Hood and Disney movie.
Not Men in Tights.
Do.
Yeah. I cover those songs all the time. Fucking Not Nottingham and shit.
Roger
Yeah,
Miller.
okay.
Yeah. Roger Miller is amazing.
That's what's up. So
yeah.
you're drawing from a whole lot. Okay, but somebody had said something about Talking Heads album or something like that. Like, you strike me as, see, David Byrne seems like a organic computer on acid. Like that's kind of his
I like
shtick,
David Byrne
right?
a lot.
Where he's
He's
like
cool.
a stuttering kind of poet.
I love his
Yeah,
his TED Talks. I saw him with St. Vincent, which was really good. And I think that, I think he didn't like the Talking Heads because they weren't as sophisticated musically as him. And so that's why he kind of disbanded the Talking Heads in the first place. But pretty good band. But Tom Tom Club is amazing also in its own right. But I think, yeah, St. Vincent is a great band. Pliny, great guitarist. Thump Abassi is a really amazing guitarist. A dude who plays a 7 and 8 string guitars. I like jazz, rock, funk. I'll listen to like Soviet bossa nova. Yeah, Zappa for sure. Frank Zappa. Interesting because he was always against drugs. He's like, anybody in the band.
Okay, that's
drugs.
a good example. Do you think he was actually doing that? Sometimes I think he drank beer a lot. I know that, and he smoked cigarettes like nobody's business. I think he even.
Right. That also sounds like a person who doesn't take drugs, like someone who's like, oh yeah, I'm against drugs. Like that's kind of fits the profile.
It's like Joe's Garage, which is a great album. If you don't know, I'm sure you probably do, but it's like, we didn't have no dope or LSD, but a couple of quarts of beer, and it would make it all work. So yeah, no, Zappa's hilarious because it gets weird. Like Jim Morrison's dad, Zappa's dad were military, and then it turns into like, are these
Yeah.
like how free are they being expressionary artists, or is this like a planted idea to make
Another Jim Morrison.
What
Yeah,
now?
Jim Morrison for sure. Jim Morrison's dad, Bay of Tonka.
Yeah.
You know,
So is it like, is this Jim Morrison's real actualization as an artist, or is this a product that they're see how conspiratorial does one want to get, right? Is it
it's a Laurel Canyon question. I was telling him earlier, is probably always, you know, he's always asking like, how close are you to Laurel Canyon? Because Laurel Canyon's where a lot of the military brat mind control music came out of, and where Charles Manson was drugged, and eventually, you know, where they targeted him to bring to was it the Folsom prison, where they gave him Orange Sunshine and then made him completely like insane when he hadn't been like that before. So, I mean, if you look into Laurel Canyon, you'll find like the Beach Boys, like I think we talked about this before, Charles Manson's song, "Look at Your Game, Girl." I got to cover that. Best song ever. It's beautiful.
I'll have to check
it. And it's Charles Manson. But it was, and Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys was like, you got to make more music, Charles. And, you know, like do it, or Chuck or whatever. And you got to do it all the time. And like, we'll record it. I have a studio, come over. So we recorded several songs, and then he got on drugs and his music got weird, like really weird.
That's
like, but it wasn't all that weird before.
We actually had,
but it was like Zappa. It was cool.
Was it that avant-garde and pushing it? Because, you know, Weasel's
he's great.
Flesh off. He's got a few things that are just so weird where it's like, this feels like an answer that's counter commercial. Like they were always making, like, we're only in it for the money and stuff like that. Was kind of anti-Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's stuffs. But Joe's Garage is dope. Fucking, there's a few things that are really good.
Just to give one reference, probably you guys don't know about this, you know, Die Toten Hosen, English translation would be the Dead Pants, and they were like super famous rock artists. And also there recently turned out that one of the main singers or something, his father already was, I don't remember exactly, but in high enough places, and they were just obviously planted, you know, or at least well connected enough to rise to the top.
They were planted by the all one consciousness, Raphael. Should we be so critical? I don't know. Laurel Canyon is just an expression of preference.
Jim, just as Andreas explained, it just depends whether you want to live in a smart city where you can't go out and gotta eat the bugs or something, you know.
But those who will go there will go there, and there's a lesson to be had in that.
Of course, the question is if you're gonna go there or me.
I don't know.
But it's interesting. I think that you know, it sounds so silly or something, but the idea of there being, you know, this is what Brezhnevinsky said, was that in a technotronic society, people will evolve to naturally stop at stoplights. Essentially, we're going to get to a point where you'll have some people that will naturally be able to just go through stoplights. There'll be sirens basically built into people. I mean, metaphorically. And it's just going to be a way of being that some people will be the predator and some people will be the prey. Some people will be submissive and other people will be above the law. It's already been built into our society that you can don that character. You can have a license to kill. You can wear a badge. You can have a vehicle that can get you through red lights. But you will become that way or not, you know?
But just to make sure, I mean, we're on the same page. It's already been that way. I just recently heard an example, which I'll completely anonymize, but that's simply that even in, you know, Europe, you could have a shootout at a casino or something, and no one would ever hear about it, you know, even though it happened. And, you know, because it was important people or something. And this like two-tier system, both medically and legally and so on, has been in place. It's just been hidden. And I guess the big joke now would be to make it super blatantly obvious, even in the, as you called it, Stepford Wives simulation West, you know. But yeah.
Right. I mean, if everyone's pretty well equalized as one population, and then there's another population that's somehow less than equal, that will call, I mean, and this is that alien kind of question, like, what is an alien? Like an illegal alien? So even if a super soldier is this new race of aliens that are just, you know, double the height and strength, and we've unlocked certain characteristics, I think it's going to be, I'm saying this now, and maybe it's too early, but I think it's something to consider, because it's funny now. All right. And the reason I say it is because AI, we've been talking about AI for 20 years or longer, people before me, you know, for sure. But I've been taking it pretty seriously. Some people back then would say this is just a movie. And I said, I don't think it is. And now we're at the point where everyone's immediately emerged in a conversation they weren't having for the last 20 years. It's been had for 20 years. So people are very quickly at, well, what if it's like, what if it isn't really like all these like really flash thoughts of the questions that they haven't really thought about. So it's too late to ask those questions, you know, and AI is here already.
Baby. It's too late. Well, yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. That's why I'm trying to like kind of be dispassionate and not so committed. It feels
But
like,
we probably still have like 5 or 10 years for super soldiers.
which
So
is
let's start asking those
Legiones
questions.
Astartes. Like talk about Warhammer 40K, which I talked about. We don't have to go into this, but it's like it's our timeline, the darkest, grimdark timeline. But it's like super soldiers and biologically bred abhumans and crazy shit. In any event,
Dude, Big Bird and Snuffleupagus. I know I said that before,
Snuffy.
but that's been on my mind a lot. They're bringing them back. There's a gestating mammoth right now. There's at least
In
one. There's probably
utero?
a lot more than that. Yeah, In Utero, the album by Nirvana, and there will very soon be a living mammoth. Isn't that
If
beautiful?
only
Does that cheer you
Kurt
up?
could know this, would he still title his album In Utero? There's a woolly mammoth.
He would have said Mastodon in Utero.
Uh,
It would have been Mastodon in Utero.
So,
Better than album,
we can kind of start winding down if you want, but what are okay? So, I mean, how would I put it? Because I feel like I'm a Naismith. So if someone says, "Oh, it's all one," I kind of go, "Oh, look, it's not." And then if someone's like, "Oh, look at this," I go, "Remember, all is one." So, and there's no like absolute thing. Are you just riding the Yuga wave and you're just like, this is what it is? It's like Kali Yuga rocks and I got to surf sup, bro. Like, how do you look at your function in the Tao? What is your primary function?
So those are two different things, but I think like it's really easier to surf the Tao. It's a lot easier just to like at a certain point, if everything is starting to collapse, then the easiest thing to do is just to surf the
Cowabunga.
Tao. But if you know, you're in other circumstances, you can rock the boat.
And do you think the boat's being rocked in a good way? Like it feels like just like the emperor has no clothes.
I'd like to think we can rock the boat collectively a direction, you know, and it will rock back. If something's rocking one way, we can sometimes rock with it a bit to rock it back,
Bebop and
you know,
rock
and
steady.
so that's
Very Valentine's Day
that's,
theme here. Rock this way, rock that way.
a keto.
That's what's up. Raphael, do you have any thoughts, concerns, comments?
No, I think that's a good
Ideas.
view. You know, that seems, you know, on the one hand humble enough, and on the other hand, and this goes out to everyone listening, you know, and it's been said so many times, you are the change you want to see, haha, blah, blah. But ultimately, you know, who's gonna arrive? I mean, everyone who hasn't been disillusioned so far, you know, get ready in terms of leaders and someone else taking care of you who's on the big screen or something. So it's all up to each and every one, you know, to make, you know, make the rock or whatever, the rocking in a certain direction, and, you know, make it whatever ride we want it to have. And I think it can be much more fun than whatever some crazy old rich people are imagining, you know. So that much is obvious, I'd say.
Right. And even though it's faunus, like, and you want to be traditional because you love Tartaria, don't go around smacking virgins with freshly bloodied skins of hides. Don't.
It's a Valentine's gift that will only go so far. It's
Not yet. Not yet.
word.
All
Well,
right.
Andreas, it's always a pleasure. High Priestess,
Happy
guys.
Faunus.
We looked under the hood. Hopefully, you guys go check out his music. Obviously, you've got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. So, where should people be checking you out? I mean, you're gonna have to list.
I mean,
40
well, if you
things,
since this became a Helena thing, you can go to helena.bandcamp.com. Helena, I guess, because
you pronounce your fucking band name right, bro. Don't. How do you do it?
Yeah. Well, if you want to use that as a joke, but otherwise, yeah, just Xirtus.com, and you can go to tartarinova.com to join the Discord. Here, I'll share the screen.
He'll do the magic.
Go to tartarinova.com
do the joy,
to share.
as Air would say. Do the joy.
You guys can join the Discord, and that's a great way to join the community. I think that's probably the best thing, because if you join the community, then you can exchange ideas, you can make your own videos, we can all
Network.
build the Exert us, you know what I mean? But also, yeah, go to Xirtus. If you're watching this, you might be watching this already from Xirtus. If you're not, make sure you go to the Act Like You Know 26 channel and subscribe there. Otherwise, go from there here and subscribe to Andreas Xirtus. Is that where you're streaming from? Act Like You Know 26?
Probably.
Where are you streaming
Ain't from
from?
me.
Yeah, we're
Early
streaming
on, Raphael was like, fuck YouTube,
Yeah.
but somehow I didn't get the memo.
Make sure you subscribe to Act Like You Know 26. It's actually an amazing channel Raphael's put together. It has a lot of really cool talks. Some of them are in German. It's a bilingual channel, and there's a lot of English talks as well. And there's some just really cool stuff here. Some some really good stuff. You've never seen these David Ewing Jr. talks before, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and for
And
now,
they're
we'll
important,
also channel Team Rabbit Hole there, channel it there, broadcast there as well. So great.
right?
281 in the
Yeah.
books. Well, Andres, thanks for giving us your
Dude.
time and energy. I hope we do meet up in the flesh sooner or later. Obviously, I got to meet up with
We will
Raphael,
soon.
but Jesus Christ, like we can't all just stay on the internet and talk about crazy bullshit forever. Let's hang out and play volleyball and
Dude.
fucking drink some virgin Mai Tais or whatever. But
Yeah, let's go to Austria though. That sounds fun.
I will go. I'm not broke,
Yeah.
right? I'm not rich. Don't get me wrong, guys. But I am not dead broke. So I'm willing to do whatever. But I wanted to help you out if you needed it. We'll talk about that on that flip side. Any in the event.
Yeah, come to California.
Happy Valentine's Day, all. Live long and prosper.
Good.
Right? Yes. Oh wow. He's got tantric Vulcanage going on. Anyway, guys, for